We're live. Hi, Joseph. Hello there, if you're there. Excuse me. Thanks very much for joining us, folks. And apologies for shifting our time tonight. Simply put, we had so much to do with this chapter that we didn't get it done in time for 9 o'clock, and we've been working solidly at it all day. So we got it finished about 10 minutes ago, just enough time for me to shove a bagel in my mouth and grab a cup of coffee. And we can get a bit of a crack at the last chapter of the first book of Dune tonight. So, as I said, apologies for running an hour late tonight. Excuse me. Genuinely, just wanted to get through this chapter and have it all covered. It's a very dense chapter, indeed, and it's a pretty important one. It really just shows us the development of through Paul, I suppose, through this major crisis point in his life. It's really the moment that the Kwisatz Haderach, if you like, awakens and his terrible purpose sort of comes to the fore, if you like. And of course, this is the scene in the still tent, which is quite important, and is kind of split, if you like. And that's kind of important as well. We'll look at that whenever we see Paul leave the tent, actually. Excuse me. Pardon me for cough. Still had a very bad throat this week. Rolando Sada says, howdy. There's Chaya Rivka saying, shalom all. Hi, Chaya. Thanks for joining us, guys. As I said, apologies for being a little bit late this week. And I'm just looking at the light in here and wondering, that's maybe a bit better. There we go. So I've been annotating away at this, and a few interesting things in this chapter, but it's kind of exposition heavy, if you like, in that we really do find out an awful lot of what is happening to Paul, and we get it really through Paul's own mind. We're going to go in there and have a look at really what's going on with him, and also how Jessica responds to this dramatic change in her son. And as much as I think we've seen Jessica possibly hoping for the Kwisatz Haderach, here he comes, basically. And we'll also get a bit of an admission from Paul, whether he's the Kwisatz Haderach or not. There's a wee bit of confusion around that in Dune, but he kind of is. So we'll just say that there now. There's Cynthia saying, hi, Doc. Hi, Cynthia. Thanks for joining us. And Bojack saying, hello. Hello, Bojack. Hi, guys. I hope this time wasn't too... I sort of know most of my viewers, if you like, are around the world in different places. Excuse me. And I suppose it's with the GMT +1 at the minute, as I think Brad had been saying about getting an early awakening to have a wee listen. But anyway, we'll have a wee nosy. And as I said, sorry for that. It wasn't for any other reason. I've been trying to protect the old throat. Then really just to sort of get through the details of this chapter. And again, it's a bit like the previous couple of chapters. Been pretty heavy on the details here. We start off with our epigraph. O seas of Caladan, O people of Duke Leto, citadel of Leto fallen forever. And another one of these songs of Muad'Dib from the Princess Irulan. Just to recap, really, from our previous chapter with the death of Leto, the death of Yuri, etc. And I suppose, you know, the people of Duke Leto, the citadel of Leto fallen, fallen forever, I suppose. Yeah, an awful lot of Leto's people get wiped out. And the one thing that I'm always curious about this is how does this all impact on Caladan, really? Because as much as we've been told about, there's a meteor streaking across the skies in the previous chapter to mark his doom, if you like. We get another little song here about, the people of Duke Leto, the citadel on Caladan, for example, fallen forever. And that's not kind of anyway indicative of what's actually happened, if you see what I mean. Castle Caladan surely is still standing at this point back on Caladan. Excuse me. Pardon me. Just after midnight here, says Chai. I think arguably that would be the best time for me to do stuff, actually, because I'm very nocturnal in my own sense here. But I suppose we wrap up around midnight, but that's really for just for my son going to work to make sure that he gets a bit of sleep, because I can be quite loud because I can't hear properly, if you see what I mean. But I always like doing a kind of like the idea of doing a wee program in the witching hour, as they like to call it. So here we go. So Paul, off we go with this chapter. Paul felt that, and there's a lot here coming basically. So let's just pile onto it. Paul felt that all his past, every experience before this night, became sand curling in an hourglass. So we've got this kind of hourglass metaphor. The sand's running out, if you like, and I suppose it's maybe that's in relation to this transition. Um, I don't know how we could look at it this way, but I suppose it's a bit like a transition from puberty into adulthood for Paul, and it happens almost instantaneously, I suppose, if you like. Um, and just in remembering that Dune is also a Bildungsroman, it's a coming of age novel, and we're going to see an incredible amount of things happen to Paul in this chapter, and they're almost all internal. So everything in his past, every experience he's ever had before now, just like sand curling in an hourglass. We get the location of where we're at. He's sat near his mother. He's hugging his knees within the small fabric and plastic hutment of a still tent. And of course, we're told that this had come like the Fremen clothing that they now wore from the pack left in the Thopter. I don't know if we've had a wee look at the still tent or anything particular yet, but we're told in the terminology of the Imperium, it's a small, sealable enclosure of micro-sandwich fabric designed to reclaim as potable water the ambient moisture discharged within it by the breath of its occupants. So there we go. There's our little reference to a still tent. And we're going to keep sort of getting reference, I suppose, to the fact that part of it is transparent. So that's it. Paul's sitting near his mother, hugging his knees within the still tent. And his thoughts go to, of course, where this stuff has come from, I suppose. No doubt in his mind who put the Frem kit there, who's directed all of this, directed the Thopter together, Yui. So it's taking a moment to think about Dr. Yui. The traitor doctor had sent them directly into the hands of Duncan Idaho. Aha! And this is this is our cliffhanger resolved, isn't it? And I just thought, I think we talked about old-fashioned Saturday morning serial cliffhangers, and literally the flying off a cliff or this kind of thing. And last we left Jessica and Paul, a moment of seemingly high danger as an ornithopter swoops in, and we cut and we're away. So we've been told that this is they've been delivered. It was Duncan, Idaho, in the Thopter, and there never was any real danger at that point. The cliffhanger has been resolved, and I just thought that I just point out that the cliffhanger has been resolved in very good cliffhanger fashion, as it should be, I suppose. Let me see. So we get a little bit of Paul's thoughts here. There's no doubt in his mind that it was Yui. He's left the Fremkit, directed the course of the Thopter, and he sent them into the hands of Duncan, Idaho, resolved our cliffhanger, and he stares out the transparent end of the still tent. I'm going to have to watch that. At the moon-shadowed rocks that ringed this place where Idaho had hidden them. Okay. So basically, Dr. Yui has directed their escape into the hands of Duncan, Idaho. The pack that's been in... I hope I'm not jumping ahead of myself here. Probably am, actually. The pack that's provided everything there that Yuri left behind. All of this is down to him. Now, at this point, of course, hiding like a child, his thoughts, when I'm now the Duke, Paul thought. And the thought galls him, and he cannot deny the wisdom of it. So we get a little bit of... and here we go. Something had happened to his awareness that night. We're told that he sees with sharpened clarity every circumstance and occurrence that goes on around him. He feels unable to stop the inflow of data or the cold precision with which each new item comes to him. He adds these things to his knowledge. The language used here is that the computation was centered in his awareness. And we're told that it was mentat power and more. So this is going to be a bit of a recurring thing with Paul, isn't it? So Sorry, I better be clear about what I meant there. The and more bit is what I thought meant there. That the and more is going to be this, and more is going to become a recurring theme. So that was a bit vague of me, wasn't it? So this is, I suppose, the awakening of the awareness that Paul's a meant at, and this is the beginning. I suppose this is something's kicked off. Something happened to his awareness, this and that, and he's starting to work like a mentat. It is mentat power and more. And interestingly, one of the things that we're going to look at is I think a wee while back, guys, that I asked the question: do the Bene Gesserit have mentats? And I think there's a possible answer to that in this chapter, and when we look at how Jessica runs data in her mind. So Cynthia says, last we saw Idaho, he was drunk, uncooperative, suspicious of Jessica. Yeah, off to sleep it off, wasn't it? What turned him around so that he was willing to help in this complex double scheme with Yui? Thoughts? Oh, it's just totally not there, isn't it? At least I don't think it is. Yeah, we have to assume that, I don't know. There's a possibility, I think, that maybe Idaho's just keeping a low profile after that. What's willing to help him in this complex double scheme with Yui's thoughts? I don't know. It's a good question. If anybody else wants to chirp in there, I was trying to figure out a sense of it about the thopters being hidden in the time there, and I was wondering, is it possible that Idaho, if Yui goes to see Idaho while events are happening, that he would be reacting in real time and say, look, they're doomed, here's a way of saving them, go. And we also get the sense, I think, that Idaho very much in Dune's not the full thinker, if you like, whereas Yui is respected and considered safe, guaranteed. It's got, we trust Yui. So it's possible that the inability of the Atreides to look at Yui and as a traitor, as that possibility, it's possible that Duncan looks at him in the same way. What wouldn't Idaho do to save the young master? Yeah, so it's a question of how Yui would sell it to him, really. If you see what I mean. I suppose the other way is that Yui would actually say, I've done all this, and if here's your only chance to save Paul and Jessica, do exactly as I say now and go and do it, or they'll all be dead, that kind of thing. But yes, I agree. I think what wouldn't he do at this point to save them, especially if the damage to the the palace at Arakeen and all these troops have just walked in. There's been virtually no resistance because the shields have been dropped. We talk about that kind of the Trojan War analogy, and depending on how you look at it, basically that the gates of Troy are taken apart to let the wooden horse in, and there's 50 men inside it. But that's it. Once everyone's snoozing, out they come and open the gates, and Bob's your uncle, job done. If you see what I mean, very similar kind of thing, and then it's just a slaughter. Cynthia's saying, I wish Herbert had given us a few hints to sort this out. Excuse me. It's possible there may be some stuff like this in relation to Idaho's memories later on, possibly as he's looking back at this time. It's been a wee while since we got into the later books of Dune. So, yeah, lots of questions, as I said. Again, Herbert's sometimes quite happy for us to fill in the blanks and not give us all our answers, unfortunately. The other thing, I suppose, is just in terms of who's surviving from the previous chapter, it gives us, at least we know that Idaho is alive. And if we follow Paul's train of thought in this, at the end of it, we should get a sense that Halleck's alive as well. As for what happened to Thufir, we don't know. But yeah, it's and it's and again we're going to bounce around in time with this in terms of the memory, if you like. So, in fact, here's our time shift here, isn't it? Really, it's Paul thinking back And he has and I quite like this in this little section here. But Paul's moment of impotent rage, as the strange Thopter dived out of the night onto them, stooping like a giant hawk above the desert, with wind screaming through its wings. Sorry. So the thing in Paul's mind happens now, I suppose. He thought back at this point, and it tells us this, that the thing in Paul's mind happened then. Sorry, that was from my notes. I was reading it's right there in the chapter, in the passage. So the way this Thopter comes in and lands, basically the way we're told that it skids and slews, etc. Towards, and again, that's us going back to when we last saw them. It's kind of giving us a bit of a flashback in terms of the scene, but from a different angle, if you like. The smell of burned sulfur from the abrasion of Thopter skids against the sand had drifted across them. And his mother, he knew, of course, he tells us that Jessica turned expecting to meet a lasgun from, carried by Harkonnens, etc., going to shoot them up, but had recognized Duncan Idaho leaning out of the cockpit, with Duncan going, "Hurry up, there's worm sign on the way south of you, hop in." So at this point, Paul already knew, and this is that we're told that Idaho was the pilot. And I thought that kind of interesting how that works, because as much as we're running back to this scene, it gives different levels of tension for Jessica and for Paul from the same event. If you like, they should have almost an equal fear of it, but he knows it's Idaho. And it's just at this point that this happens, I suppose. Whereas Jessica's actions turn expecting to meet violence at the hands of a lasgun, that kind of thing. So Paul already knew that Idaho was the pilot. And we're told that this is the accumulation of minutiae, the way it was flown, the path of the landing, clues that are so small that Jessica can't see them. I suppose within this chapter, we have this pairing of Paul and Jessica, and essentially that we're going to look at them as mother. If we talk about our archetypes, they're mother and son here. Excuse me, mother and hero, if you like. And we're also looking at them as two halves of a male-female syzygy. And arguably, there's three people in the tent if we want to include Alia, who's an embryo at this point. So this is more of this mentat type skill. The way it was just basically observing the details in that little, that must be Duncan, Idaho. But these clues are so small that Jessica's not able to see them. And so what we're getting in a sense is a pairing which is of mother and son here. We're getting to see the real growth is how we've been looking at Jessica's abilities up until now. I think arguably I would say that in terms of mental and physical ability, the person that seems to be the most dangerous person that we've met in the Dune universe, in my opinion so far, is Jessica. If you see what I mean. She's demonstrated that. Paul, we're thinking equally deadly, but and we've also recently been told, that the mother's like the son, and the son's like the mother in this sense. But we're going to see that Paul's going to move way beyond his mother in this chapter, and it is an accelerated growth, if you like. And Jessica's going to be aware of that as well, and probably to a much greater extent, Paul's going to be aware of it. So it's at this point, the thing that happens to Paul's mind, to his consciousness, is, if we ever want to remember back, it's at this point where that Thopter comes in. That's where it goes ping, really, for him for the first time. Yeah, we get that little sulfur smell there, that hint of fire and brimstone, that kind of thing, if you like. Let me see. So, and also, there's worm sign on the way. Now, find my notes here. Yeah, and of course he'd known precisely who sat at those controls, as we're told. And we go back from that little memory to the still tent again, back to the present. Where are we? Number 7. Back to the present, and we're in the still terminology. We've had a wee look at the terminology of the Imperium already. So Jessica comes up with this basically. there can be only one explanation. The Harkonnens held Yui's wife. That's it. He hated the Harkonnens. I can't be wrong about that. You read his note, but why has he saved us from this carnage? And that's Jessica's question. And again, it's Paul's thoughts about Jessica now that are going to seem quite out of kilter for us. But and it almost makes us look at it's a shift in their intelligence, their awareness, and how they view things, and it's kind of condescending in a way. In fact, I would say it's condescending. It's certainly not. It's not patronizing. It's condescension in his mind, and he's judging, I think, in a way, his mother in some ways. She's only now seeing it, and that poorly. Paul thought. The thought was a shock. He had known this fact as a by the way thing while reading the note that had accompanied the ducal signet in the pack. So there we go. Paul has, just from the note, he got it all. All the little things fell into place, and he kind of understands it all. But Jessica's only seeing that now, and not all of it. She's not getting all of it at all. And it does make us think a little bit, oh, hang on, Jessica's been pretty sharp here so far. And I suppose it's to do with the level of things that are hidden, if you like. This chapter has some great lines about possible futures. So much fun. It does indeed. It's going to take us all over the place a bit. It's a wee bit hard to keep a track on. Possible futures, probabilities. But this is the chapter, Bojack, that really gives us a good sense of how Paul's, terrible purpose, how his gift, if you like, works. So we also get Dr. Yui's letter at this point, because we haven't really seen that. And here we go. We actually get the whole thing written to us. I'll just read Dr. Yui's letter. That's for its sake. So it's, do not try to forgive me, Yui had written. I do not want your forgiveness. I already have enough burdens. What I have done was done without malice or hope of another's understanding. It is my own Tahadi al-Burhan, my ultimate test. I give you the Atreides ducal signet as token that I write truly. By the time you read this, Duke Leto will be dead. Take consolation from my assurance that he did not die alone, that one we hate above all others died with him. It had not been addressed or signed, but there had been no mistaking the familiar scrawl, Yui's. So there we go. There's the full contents of Yui's letter. And we have a couple of little bits of things to chat about here within it. We get this phrase that it's Yui's own Tahadi al-Burhan. Now, this ultimate test, as he describes it. So if we flick to the terminology of the Imperium, let's have a look. Terminology of the Imperium. There we go. So we have a couple of entries with Tahadi, but the first one is Tahadi al-Burhan, we're told is an ultimate test from which there can be no appeal. And we're also told in brackets that this means this is usually because it brings death or destruction. We also have underneath that entry a Tahadi challenge, which is a Fremen challenge to mortal combat, usually to test some primal issue. So in this case, this is Dr. Yui's, everything that he's done here is his own Tahadi al-Burhan, his own ultimate test, and that's what we're told in relation to the terminology of the Imperium. Now, in Arabic, let me see. Burhan is a word that means proof. And a Tahadi is also in Arabic a challenge. So in that sense, a Tahadi al-Burhan is a challenge of proof, if we want to take the words literally. Oh, yeah, I've got a few wee bits and pieces on Arabic in this one tonight. And for anybody who, let me just see if I can bring this up. By the way, I've got a couple of very interesting things that are mentioned that are influences on Frank Herbert tonight, albeit somewhat briefly at the back of the chapter. Let's see. There we go. Now, I've got the right. There we go. I'm just going to paste in a link here, folks. There we go. There we go. Hope that came through okay. That is a link to Kaladin Bahildon's website, and this is the Bahildon dynasty. But this is his section on his website about Arabic and Islamic themes in Frank Herbert's Dune. And it was an excellent source in terms of Arabic for myself years and years ago. So all of this is still online. And he has an excellent little section on all these various all these various Arabic terms that are in Dune, and just sort of like in a table going down, the English term from Dune in Arabic, and then basically what it means in Dune, and if there's any particular meaning in Arabic as well. So it's a good little website for if any of you want to check out some of these Arabic terms. So there we go. That's our Tahadi al Burhan, is a challenge of proof in this case. So he's given him the signet ring. Let me just get back to where we were. Yeah, Kaladin Bahildon's website, by the way, Khaled's work was this, basically the source for most of what I needed in terms of Arabic for my PhD, so it's very good. I've enjoyed reading it. Let's have a wee look. Sorry, just lost my page there. The book's flipped over. Just grab it there. I'm trying to figure it out. There we are. 22 is where we're at. I'm in the wrong chapter. That's why. There we go. So we've Dr. Yui's letter. Just a few points about it, I suppose. So we just left off there to chat about that phrase there. He gives the Atreides ducal signet as a sign that he writes truly. And by the time you read this, Duke Leto will be dead. If it's any consolation, take the assurance that he did not die alone. One we hate above all others died with him. So first of all, in relation to Dr. Yui's letter, it's one I used to explain to people, the difference between insurance and assurance, if you like. But assurance is something that's guaranteed to happen, so that he did not die alone. So I suppose in that case, he didn't die alone, but the one that we hate above all others died with him. This is not true. So this is, I suppose, Yui's, hopeful, I suppose, reportage of what would happen in the future if his plan went according to the way it should, I suppose. So not addressed, not signed, familiar scrawl, Yui's. Now, remembering this re-experiences, he's remembering this and he re-experiences the distress of this moment. Which all the things sharp and strange seem to happen outside his new mental awareness. He'd read that his father was dead, known the truth of the words, but had felt as no more than another datum to be entered into his mind and used. So again, we're still going with this side of Paul that's really coming out here is he's a mentat and something more. Pardon me. So again, we're getting Paul's thoughts on this. I love my father. I should mourn him. I should feel something. And there's nothing here except that the fact that he's dead. That's an important fact. That's one that can go with all these other facts. We get told his mind is adding. Let me just get the sense impressions. Right. All this while, his mind was adding sense impressions, extrapolating, computing. And of course, we get a return to our famous Gurney Halleck's rather bizarre little statement. I always thought it's the one that everybody really likes quoting, isn't it? From Dune, mood's a thing for cattle or for making love. And I just, of all the metaphors in the world, that's what mood's for: cattle and making love. Really, the wit was that I still think the poetry of Gurney Halleck and the songs of poetry, songs of Gurney Halleck, aren't that great. To be honest. But it makes him recall Gurney Halleck's words. You fight when the necessity arises, no matter what your mood. And Paul runs with this thinking in the sense that that's it. Perhaps that's it. You know, um, I'll mourn my father later. If you see what I mean, that's when there's time to do so. And by the time we get to the end of this chapter, that's he will take the time to mourn. But again, on we go with this onslaught on poor Paul's mind, and it's kind of relentless as it goes. It builds as we go through the chapter. Um, no let up in the cold precision of his being. He sensed that his new awareness was only a beginning. It's growing, and here we go. This sense of terrible purpose. The sense of terrible purpose he'd first experienced in his ordeal with the Reverend Mother Gaius Hellmohiam pervaded him. His right hand, the hand of remembered pain, tingled and throbbed. Here we go. So, and he's wondering, of course, and here we are. Is this what it is? Is this what it is to be their Kwisatz Haderach? He wondered. Very much so. There's that hand imagery again, and the remembered pain that it never seems to go away, does it? From the Gom Jabbar, there's always a sense of it somewhere. And his right hand again represents, I suppose, Paul in terms of a divine manner, in terms of agency and power. And it's a hand of it, but it's tingles and throbbed. It's almost as if it's ready to go, if you see what I mean. So he's asking, is this what it means to be a Kwisatz Haderach? Is this it? Is this what's going on with me? And we get Jessica, we get a shift into Jessica's thoughts here. And she says, for a while I thought, again, here we go. For a while I thought how it had failed us again. Jessica said, I thought perhaps Yuri wasn't a Suk doctor. So this is how he's trying to rationalize what Yuri's done, because somewhere, again, they just can't fathom that, the conditioning. I think maybe it's not that the conditioning has been broken. It's maybe he wasn't a Suk after all. Maybe it was a disguise. Excuse me. Trying to come up for some reason why they didn't see it, I suppose. And Paul kind of ends that, really. He was everything we thought him and more. And again, that link to Paul here, we're told, that he's a mentat and more. He's going to be the Kwisatz Haderach and more, something like that. But Dr. Yi was certainly much more than just the Suk doctor. And again, we get this, and he thought, why is she so slow at seeing these things? If Idaho, and he that's his thought there. It's just, why is she so slow? And I think it's at this point, I think Paul's probably not aware of just maybe the speed of his own thoughts, the way his own mind is working. It's just starting to kick in. If you see what I mean, or it's maybe he's just starting to comprehend that he's on a different level and thinks, I don't know. It's almost that he sees Jessica's thinking as impaired here. I'm not too sure. Why is she slow? It's not that she doesn't see the things, but why is she so slow at seeing them? And again, Jessica's been very, very much, her eyes have been very observant, her skills very much bang on as we've gone throughout this novel. And it's kind of funny seeing her almost as if she's in that sense almost like a helpless child with Paul here in this tent, I think. Just in adding that we've seen certainly the very least Howard being made utterly helpless, by Jessica. Not a chance, not even close, that kind of thing. Right, let's see where we're at, folks. Okie dokie. So is everything and more? Why is she so slow? And we're also given a little bit of info here. If Idaho doesn't get through to Kynes, will be, and that's left hanging. And that kind of gives us enough information where Idaho is at, trying to connect up with Leah at Kynes. Setting up things for the future. So, and again, Jessica interjects here saying, Kynes, this is not our only hope. And Paul's very, very sort of matter of fact with her here. It basically says, I never said that he was. That's not, such was not my suggestion. And we get this another little, she can hear the steel in his voice, the sense of command, and stared across the grey darkness of the still tent at him. It's one of those things. This most of this is taking place in a still tent, in a tent. If you think in terms of what our characters, where there's room, if you like, it's a very sort of claustrophobic environment. And even when they're trying to hide their feelings from each other, that kind of thing, or all they can really do is look away, if you see what I mean. And it was it was a bit of a motif at the start, wasn't it, with the various people who couldn't cover up their emotions, just having to look away or run away, that kind of thing. There we go. So she could hear the steel in his voice, the sense of command, and she looks across the grey darkness of the still tent at Paul, and he's like a silhouette against the moon-frosted rocks. And again, we were told about this, the transparency of the tent end, if you like. Jessica wonders about some of her Leto's men escaping and suggests that they should regroup. And Paul's having no. Basically, he tells that we must depend upon ourselves, and that the immediate concern, as far as he's concerned, is the family atomics. And they have to get to them basically before the Harkonnens find them. So in terms of what assets that House Atreides really have left, we get the sense that that's what the family atomics are about, is that each of the greater houses has some nuclear weapons, and they hide them, have them stashed ready for bringing out of use. So basically, whenever they've arrived on Arrakis, they've brought these nuclear weapons with them, and they've hid them somewhere. And the Harkonnens are would be aware that the Atreides would have brought their family atomics with them, and therefore, that they're somewhere on Arrakis. Excuse me, not likely to be found the way they were hidden. And it kind of makes you wonder, well, how hard would nuclear weapons be able to, be found, I suppose. Probably pretty tricky, I'd imagine, if they're hid well. So nothing must be left to chance, is what Paul says here. And that kind of echoes the Baron, I think, from the previous chapter. Doesn't like things being left to chance. And here we go. So Jessica runs with these thoughts. Basically, if this is what he plans to blackmail, we'll go blackmail with these family nukes. We'll threaten to blow up the planet, all the spice, that kind of thing. If that's what he has in mind, all you can hope for really is just to become a renegade house and just disappear into anonymity. And I don't think that's what Paul has in mind here at all. Though, of course, it's going to be part of the threat later on, isn't it? And ultimately, Paul is going to use the family atomics later on. But in line with the Great Convention, he won't use them against people. So it's an interesting little point. We've got our family nukes are somewhere around, and obviously I'd assume that one of these two, Paul and Jessica, know where they are. I think it's Jessica knows where they are, really, to be honest. But I suppose at this point Paul would know too, wouldn't he? He's prescient. So there we go. So I think, again, Jessica not quite getting what Paul's about here. We get this little moment here. His mother's words provoked another train of thought in Paul. A duke's concern for all the people that they'd lost that night. People are the true strength of a great house, Paul thought, and he remembered Howitt's words. Parting with people is a sadness. A place is only a place. Let me see. In terms of that, I would disagree. Some places are special. You can be sad to leave them, I think. As for a duke's concern for his people, that people are the true strength of a great house, is that a great house is nothing without people to exploit, without people to be soldiers, without people to die for them, without people to be their servants, to wash their boots, to turn on their shields, all of this kind of thing. Howitt's words, parting with people is a sadness, a place is only a place. And I've just put that's bad wisdom, I suppose. Depends on how you look at it. Now, At this point, Jessica pipes in that they're using the Sardaukar. We must wait until the Sardaukar have been withdrawn. And this is a bit of a hard lesson coming up for Jessica here. I think Paul's quite straightforward. He's pretty much brutal here, actually. But it's not brutal. It's just cold, calculating, and correct. And, it shows you where her thinking is, and it's a little bit not right. Paul says they think is caught between the desert and the Sardaukar. They intend that there be no Atreides survivors, total extermination. Don't count on any of our people escaping. And of course, she says they can't go on indefinitely risking exposure of the Emperor's role in this. And of course, his response is, can't they? Some of our people are bound to escape. Are they? It's wishful thinking, absolutely wishful thinking from Jessica. And he's being, you think I'd say, you think the Sardaukar would risk hanging around a bit longer? What does the Emperor care? Sure, why not? They're in disguise. Why worry about that? There's nobody left to report them, really, is there? Some of our people are bound to escape. Doubtful. Are they? And it's a bit of a shock to Jessica. It's a hard taste of the truth, isn't it? She turns away, frightened, with a bitter strength in her son's voice. So she hears a precise assessment of their chances, and that she senses that his mind has leaped ahead of hers. Here we are. This is this part we were talking about. In some respects, he sees a lot more than she does. She trained the intelligence which did this, and she's frightened of it. And Paul's going to raise this with her in a bit, actually, about the training that she's given her son and its role in creating Paul, I suppose. Let me just find this here. Yeah, here we are. So she sensed that his mind had leaped ahead of her, that it now saw more in some respects than she did. She'd helped train the intelligence which did this, but now she found herself fearful of it. Her thoughts turned seeking towards the lost sanctuary of her duke, and tears burned her eyes. And I don't know. This is the way it had her thoughts here. And it's just interesting, the lost sanctuary of her duke. And really, part of me used to think about what is it that Jessica really sees in Leto Atreides, but at the end of the day, it has to be just love, doesn't it? There's Am saying, hello, Am, thanks for joining us. We're just piling through chapter 2 here, and we're really just getting going, aren't we? Pardon me, I get some juice fluids here, or coffee first. So it's quite a bit full on there from Paul, and it's just short, crisp little sentences. Can't they? Are they? It's pretty much putting paid to her wishful thinking. So we get her thoughts at this point. It's the way it had to be, Leto. She thought, a time of love and a time of grief. And she rests her hand on her abdomen. Awareness focused on the embryo there. So I have the Atreides daughter I was ordered to produce. But the Reverend Mother was wrong. A daughter wouldn't have saved my Leto. This child is only life reaching for the future in the midst of death. I conceived out of instinct and not out of obedience. Pardon me. And that's in relation to Alia. And so she's thinking that even if I had a daughter way back then, this would not have saved Leto, for the father, nothing, all of this. And we get that inescapable sense of doom, destiny, fate, whatever you want to call it, that nothing in this universe could have stopped Leto Atreides from dying the way he did. So we also know that then Jessica is pregnant with a daughter of Leto's, and Paul's going to have a sister, and this is going to be Alia, who's going to be a great character. Absolutely love Alia, and Alia represents another half of a syzygy with Paul. But yeah, I think great that we get to the point where Alia is more involved in the story. Great character. Okay, and this time the difference is conceived out of instinct, not obedience, life reaching for the future in the midst of death. Right. Try community again. There we are. Okay, so Paul says to her to try the communinet again, receiver again. And again, we get Jessica's thoughts just about the mind going on, working within bad situations, etc. Does what it must. Oh, very quickly, the little reference that we have there, by the way, jumping back before we go on, because I skipped over a time of love and a time of grief. That's going to be Ecclesiastes, isn't it? Now we've got some more of that coming up, so we'll have a wee chat about the note when we get there. Let me just see if I can find it. It's way down. I'm trying to think of the song, isn't it? There is who's that? Oh, is it the Yardbirds? No, it wouldn't be. Let me just quickly. Where are we? Well, if I can't find it here, I haven't got all this stuff highlighted down, but we'll just worry about it whenever we get there. Ecclesiastes 3 verses 1 to 8. So we've got a bunch of that coming up later on, but that's the first little. He's dropping a line of that there, and so these will be quotes from the Orange Catholic Bible that are based on that verse from Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is an interesting book of the Bible to look at in relation to science fiction writers, and I think it's often described. It's often described as atheists' favorite book of the Bible. It's an interesting one. We'll have a wee chat about it later, actually. And its attributed authorship is quite interesting. What makes it a different book than all the rest of the books in the Bible is also quite interesting. So yeah, I like Ecclesiastes. I would be one of those people that if you ask me what's the I would put it there as what's the least offensive book of the Bible to me, I'd go it's Ecclesiastes. Probably the way I really like Genesis because of the myth stuff, the creation myths. Well, it's not really just those kind of things. Cosmogonies and theogonies I quite like. There we are. Right. So that's Alia. So try the communinet again. And Jessica makes this wee comment about the mind going on working. Tries the tiny receiver that Idaho has left him. Flips the switch. We get this green light. So we get a lot of green light ambience, if you like, in this scene. And again, we've been chatting about we must have a wee look at all the color associations within Freud. Or sorry, not Freud, Jung. Was it to do with alchemy and that kind of thing, isn't it? So we'll have to get a wee bit of time to grab those color associations. Pardon me. So we get a little bit of some voices coming over the speakers in Atreides battle language, and this gives us a little bit of a sense of what's going on in the background with what's happened with the Harkonnen, the Sardaukar, the Atreides troops, the fighting, etc. We just get the odd little fragments of this that we get let me see, 21. We get back and regroup at the ridge. Fedor reports no survivors in Carthage, and the guild bank has been sacked, which is quite an important piece of information. Carthage, Jessica thought, that was a Harkonnen hotbed. So that's a place where the Harkonnens are meant to be. So how come it's been hit pretty hard? And it looks like this is probably an example of the Baron maybe sacrificing a few of his own people. So we do find out more from the voice on the radio, if you like, sorry, the communinet, that they're Sardaukar. And in this case, they're not dressed in Harkonnen uniforms, they're dressed as Atreides troops. So Sardaukar dressed in Harkonnen uniforms have and then a roaring filled the speakers, then silence, Try the other bands, Paul said. Do you realize what this means? And of course, he tells us he expected it. So, simply put, we've seen a bit in the background. Leto has launched a preemptive strike against the Harkonnens, and destroyed all their spice reserves on Gedi Prime, which has changed things a bit for the Baron. But here you see, and we've had the Guild Banker in earlier. We talked about the relationship with the, is it the Harkonnen? There's a Harkonnen spy working for the Guild Bank, wasn't there, or something like that, at the banquet. So here we've had is that the Guild Bank, obviously quite wealthy, and the Baron's taken an opportunity while using Sardaukar to do the bank over, basically, and rob it and make it look like it's been the Atreides who've done it. Maybe as a sort of last ditch of desperation by Atreides soldiers before they get off planet, that kind of thing. Bit of war looting. So the Guild Bank on Arrakis has been hit, and we must imagine that that's a pretty wealthy bank. If you see a pretty important bank, I would imagine. So Paul tells us that he expected it, that they want the Guild to blame the Atreides for the destruction of that bank. And again, it's just it gives a little bit more of those plans within plans within plans, and possibly the Baron adapting and improvising a little bit, I think. So Jessica weighs Paul's words here. I expected it. What has happened to him? She's, starting to look at her son. How could he have expected this, And again, she returns to the instrument. We get a little bit more. She moves the band slide. Glimpses of violence and the few voices calling out in Atreides battle language. Fall back, trying to regroup it, trapped in a cave, that kind of thing. And again, it's one of those things that we do talk about Dune being an anti-war novel, and this is how we see the battles and fighting. It's in reportage, it's in the background, it's through little glimpses of something happening on a radio, and it lets our imagination go to work. But there's not an endless slaughter on these pages. So and again, we're also told from the tone on the Communinet that there's no mistaking the various victorious exaltation in the Harkonnen gibberish that poured from the other bands. Hey, yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Thanking you. I got fresh hot coffee, which is always a delight. Aha. I'm switching from guitar mug to no, I will not fix your computer mug. Right. There we go. That's lovely. Thank you very much. Sorry, folks, that's my wife just bringing me a nice cup of coffee. Cup of Joe. Yeah, so Carthage is the Harkonnen place on pretty much built by the Harkonnens, I think. Just have a wee quick check again in our terminology of the Imperium. Is it in there? No. Oh, surprising. I think the obvious reference to Carthage here, by the way, is Carthage, which features heavily in the ancient world and I suppose various stories. And of course, I wonder where Carthage would be. Carthage would be a modern day Tunisia, and I think, let me see, Carthage would be Tunis, I think. So it's modern day Tunis, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I might be completely wrong there, but that's Carthage. Of course, Dido and Aeneas and all sorts of things like that. So, and of course, the Romans fought a war against the Carthaginians. Fought 3 wars against them, and would have been a sort of main rival for them, and I suppose in the Mediterranean at a certain point. And culturally very interesting, yes. So there we go, Carthage. I think there's, again, just the name, it's a little nod back to Carthage. Let's see. So yeah, the Guild Bank's been done over. And again, it reminds me of little things in history, particularly Roman Empire, that kind of thing. Any melange in that cup of Joe? No, but I have been known to put a wee pinch of cinnamon in my coffee over the years. Tunisia today, Tunis was province in Roman Empire. Yeah, that's before Rome became an empire. So that'll be the Roman Republic. But yeah, modern day Tunisia. I've never been actually, guys, but I'll tell you what. My mum and dad went, and I don't know if it's here, but I've actually would very specifically tell my dad that if he saw anything Roman, photograph it. And I have a wee photographic, and I think it might be here. I'll not go running off looking for it, but I must show you some. My father's a rather good photographer, and I'll explain why one day. But there's got some rather interesting photos of stuff from there, which is very, very curious. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I never quite got the association with the Baron, with the Harkonnens, though. That's one thing. I just think it's just a nod, to an ancient city, if you like. Pardon me. Now, let me figure out where we're at. Carthage Bank. Now, what does this mean for Paul and Jessica? Right, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes, we were just going that it expected that, and also that we were getting this victorious exaltation, Harkonnen gibberish, poured in from the other bands, sharp commands, battle reports, and we're told there's not enough of it for Jessica to register and break the language, but the tone was obvious. Harkonnen victory. I made a wee point there that I just thought if the Harkonnens are your arch enemies, granted there's a Gallic, isn't there? The Gaelic is your galactic language. You think somebody in House Atreides would have learned Harkonnen, whatever that is, if you see what I mean. No. Oh, simply put, sorry, the wee bit that we missed there. I was just trying to see. I did miss a wee bit there. Paul and Jessica, do you know what this means? That's the bit we were after there. Hang on a wee second. I expected it. They want the guild to blame us for destruction of their bank. With the guild against us, we're trapped on Arrakis. Try the other bands. So it was just that wee bit, and we talked about that, expecting it, etc. So simply put, if the guild think that the Atreides have moved against them, whether they were going to get off planet with the smugglers or with somebody's ships, or they need ships to get off planet, how they would then get to Two Pile is actually via the guild, isn't it? And so there's some sort of deal there. So the guild have various deals that are manipulated in the background, and nobody interferes with this one, and it's the one that allows renegade houses to escape. So in this sense, if the guild think the Atreides, then they're not going to help them at all, even in the sense of fleeing to Tupile or Tupile and becoming, how would we put it, a renegade house. So that option is now dead to them, I think. Okay. Let's see, 22. Yeah, fall back, 23. Right, so at this point then we get this bit of a distraction here. Paul shook the pack beside him, hearing the 2-litre johns of water gurgle there. Takes a deep breath, looks through the transparent end of the tent at the rock outlined against the stars. So they keep staring out of this transparent end of the tent, really, because there's nothing else to look at, pretty much in this, in terms of our scenery and our scene itself, etc. So, basically, takes a deep breath. His left hand felt the sphincter's feel of the tent's entrance. It'll be dawn soon, he said. We can wait through the day for Idaho, but not through another night. In the desert, we must travel by night and rest and shade through the day. Right, and that's me caught up to where I was. Right. So, 2-litre johns, that's 2 litres of water. And if they need 5 litres each per day, then they're in bother already. So they're starting to think like Fremen, starting to think about water preservation, water conservation, etc. And we get a bit of desert lore, a bit of desert knowledge there. Travel at night in the desert, rest in the shade during the day. Cynthia says, reports of the loss of the guild bank points to off-planet wealth. Paul's mind turns to their water stores. That is the important wealth now. Yes, indeed. In the moment, it's water. And almost everything is him seeing what's going on. They're getting this up off the radio, picking up that we're starting to piece all the picture together, I suppose, of what's happened over this entire evening and night and into the morning. We're heading towards dawn, aren't we? And yes, indeed, waters now, you know, money. It's an interesting thing, I suppose money can be worthless in a state of war, absolutely worthless. And probably its biggest worth is that you can set fire to it and get warm in some situations. So this is, let's see, remembered lore. Remembered lore insinuated itself in Jessica's mind, our Dune lore. Without a still suit, a man sitting in shade on the desert needs 5 liters of water a day to maintain body weight. And she felt the slick, soft skin of the still suit against her body, thinking how their lives depended on these garments. Um, oh, let me just bring this up. The whole idea of the second skin. Bear with me a second. I'll look up. Let's see. The Moapo. The Moapo of Leto II in Herbert's Atreides saga by, I think it's Marie Noelle Zinder from 1995, is a paper all about this, and it specifically focuses on Leto II, but it's to do with excuse me, the work of French psychoanalyst Didier Anzu, and his ideas of Le Moapo, which is skin ego. It's about the relationship between the skin of a human as a kind of physical envelope for the body and a psychic skin, which functions in a similar manner in relationship to the ego. So that's just an interesting wee thing to do. It's all to do with Leto II, though, specifically. So there is a way of, there's somebody's taken I suppose an approach to looking at the second skins, if you like, of certain characters. I suppose all the Fremen were a second skin, and if you like, it's the still suit. And looked at it from a psychological approach. I suppose the idea of having the second skin. So there you go. But it's I've got the article somewhere myself, by the way. If you're a Leader of the Second fan, it's a really, really good article. Highly recommend reading it. I must get around to getting my website up and start putting some of this stuff up, actually, folks, so that we can share it with you a bit easier. Right, let's have a look. So yeah, preoccupation with moisture is going to be the thing, isn't it? And it's been Jessica who I think has adapted to it most. That it's been popping into her mind and her awareness more, I'd say, since the Atreides have been on Arrakis than anybody else from the household. So Paul running through some options again. And the other thing, by the way, as much as that she felt the skin of the still suit, that their lives are going to depend on the still suit, in a similar way that they're dependent. You can't, you're not going to live too long on this planet without one. You're dependent on a piece of technology, and we'll also find that they're going to be dependent on a drug as well. So Jessica's point out, if the let me see. So yeah, Paul been talking about we can wait for Idaho throughout the day, but when it gets to nighttime, we've got to go. Jessica replies that if we leave here, Idaho can't find us. At which point Paul again just sort of basically explains that if he, without saying so, that if he hasn't got here, he's probably been captured and tortured, and we'll talk. Though the way he presents it to Jessica is, there are many ways to make a man talk, he said. If Idaho hasn't returned by dawn, we must consider the possibility he's been captured. How long do you think he could hold out? So the question required no answer, and she sat in silence. And again, just this playing with equipment in the tent, if you like, just because there's not really much else that the author can do here. But this is part of the trick, if you like, where we're kind of we're in this little sealed environment, and we're going to get a little bit of idea of what kind of equipment you would need to survive on this planet. So Paul lifted the seal on the pack and pulled out a tiny micro manual with glow tab and magnifier. Green and orange letters leaped up at him from the pages. Liter Johns, still tent, energy caps, recaths, sand snork, binoculars, still suit rep kit, Baradai pistol, sync chart, filt plugs, para compass, maker hooks, thumpers, frem kit, fire pillar. Many things for the survival on the desert. And he just puts this aside and sets it on the tent floor. But it's one of those quite interesting things, I suppose, this wee micro manual. And we're going to see another one here in a minute or two, aren't we? The manual of the friendly desert. Yeah, green and orange letters leaped up from the page. These are all the little entries on this little micro manual. And it sounds got a little ebook, if you like. So there's all sorts of things for surviving. Pops the manual aside, and Jessica asks, where can we possibly go? And we get this little shift again, where Paul talks about his father's ideas. My father spoke of desert power here. The Harkonnens cannot rule this planet without it. They've never ruled this planet, and nor shall they. Not even with 10,000 legions of Sardaukar. And Jessica says, you can't think that. And again, all the evidence. Paul's interrupting. Again, what she's wondering about what's going on with him here. Paul, you can't think that. We've all the evidence in our hands. Just interrupts her. He said, right here in this tent. The tent itself. This pack, its contents, these still suits. We know the guild wants a prohibitive price for weather satellites. We know that. And what have weather satellites to do with it, she asked. They couldn't possibly, and then she broke off. So it's joining up the dots, really, isn't it? There's all sorts of little tidbits here that we've been given, and it's trying, just like I suppose the Atreides, maybe it's time to kind of connect some of them up. So we kind of know why we're pretty sure why there's no weather satellites at this point, but they're figuring it out for themselves. Paul sensed the hyper alertness of his mind, reading her reactions, computing on minutiae. You see it now. So it's a bit like I think this moment's a bit like Jessica with Doctor, trying to figure out who could possibly have rendered me unconscious. They would have to have known my body weight. It's one of those, I think. They couldn't possibly, if you see what I mean, that kind of thing. You see it now, he says. Satellites watch the terrain below. There are things in the deep desert that will not bear frequent inspection. And the things that won't bear frequent inspection are, of course, the Fremen. That's who doesn't want. That's who does not want frequent inspection. So Jessica says, "Are you suggesting that the guild controls this planet?" And again, Paul's just going so slow. Oh dear, no! With an exclamation mark. The Fremen. They pay the guild for privacy. And the coin that they do so with is freely available to anyone who has desert power. This is what his father was talking about, the spice. And he says to her that this is more than a second approximation answer. This is a straight line computation and that she can depend upon it. So this is his mentat abilities working here. And again, Jessica kind of, what she says here is a bit, I'm not too sure. Paul, Jessica said, you're not a mentat yet. You can't know for sure how. And we get this response from Paul. I'll never be a mentat, he said. I'm something else, a freak, and it's, I've put here just in terms of Paul's response here that this is, sadly, this is a teenager's response, isn't it? It's quite sad that, and we're being told slowly and surely that the element of Paul that is a child is being removed here as we go through this chapter. But that response, I think, is a, there's part of him that still is a young man. He's a young man. There's a teenager. There's a boy. I'm something else, a freak. Paul, how can you say such a thing? leave me alone. There you go. Typical, oh, and in all sense, it's justified here. He turns away, and again, I've said there's nowhere really to go in this tent that they've got to hide in. And again, we get Paul starting to ask some questions about himself. He's doing a bit of soul searching. Why can't I mourn? And we're told actually that he craves this release, but it would be denied to him forever. Let me see. And I'm not sure if I buy that or not. Why can't I mourn? He wondered. He felt that every fiber of his being craved this release, but it would be denied him forever. That feeling, it would be denied for him forever, I think. Because I think he does get that release at the end of the chapter. He does grieve. Jessica had never heard such distress in her son's voice. So Jessica has this maternal instinct here, I think. She wants to reach out and hold him. She wants to comfort him. She wants to help her son. But she senses that there's nothing she can do here. And that he's got to solve this problem by himself. And again, we get this sort of the glowing tab of the Frem kit manual between them on the tent floor caught her eye. She lifted it, glanced. So they're getting sort of using the objects, if you like, within this tent to sort of distract them a little bit from the pain and the immediacy of their problems. And so, yeah, the glowing tab of this little Frem kit manual. It's between them on the tent, and she lifts it, glances at the flyleaf reading, and we're told that this is the Manual of the Friendly Desert. I'll just read this from this bit, actually. So it's the Manual of the Friendly Desert, the place full of life. Here are the ayat and burhan of life. Believe, and Allah shall never burn you. Right. And before we'll move on, we'll just have a wee chat about a couple of those words there. So we had previously there the Tahadi al-Burhan, this ultimate test that Dr. Yui talks about. Our translation of that from Arabic would really be a challenge of proof, if you like. So the word Burhan means proof in that sense. And just within this, there we go. And again, you can look at Khaled M. Bahildon's website if you like to have a look at some of this stuff. We have the word ayat in Arabic is to do with signs of life, and Burhan in Arabic, the proofs of life in this context. So we're told that believe and Allah shall never burn you. Now, okay, this one could get messy, and I could get occupied in this stuff all day. So I'll leave this to your happy reading, if you like, and I'll point you to Wikipedia and stuff. So Allat is another name for Alalat, who I would know from my Herodotus. Alatu, Allat, etc. This is a pre-Islamic Arabian goddess. I would have almost went with Mesopotamian, but I don't think it's particularly to do with that region. So she's an Arabian goddess, if you like, from pre-Islamic period, quite going back quite a few thousand years, actually. So this goddess is associated with Aphrodite, for example, in the Greek mythology, and to a degree, who else? Let me see. I think she would be associated with Demeter, possibly as well. Just having a thought about it. Various other, also, Aphrodite, Venus, goddesses of love, that kind of thing. She can also, I think she's also known as Elat, is the wife of El, which is the name of the Christian god, if you like. One of his older names, described as a Semitic deity. So also associations with Astarte and Ishtar. Yeah. So you'll have a wee check. If you look this up on Wikipedia, you'll find a wealth of information there pointing you to all sorts of stuff, but you'll have to go and do your homework and your reading. There's quite a lot to this goddess. So, and if you particularly, I'm quite interested in, I suppose, Sumerian and Mesopotamian mythologies, that kind of stuff as well. And I'm a big fan of my Epic of Gilgamesh, and excuse me, I've got a wonderful collection of poems. It's called Poems of Heaven and Hell from Ancient Mesopotamia. So it's among some of the oldest writings in the world. And if anybody's ever interested in this stuff, you can get these things on book form. You know, you can get them from Penguin Classics. Would have a bunch of them. Do I have any of them here? Hang on. Let me see. Oh, we've got a. Well, that's Gilgamesh. I'm sure we're all familiar with that. I'm not going nosying too much. So I've just got mostly my Greek and Roman stuff up here. Oh, and I must bring out my wee book on constellations tonight, actually, because we're going to have a look at the Muad'Dib, the constellation, as opposed to the moon shadow. Pardon me. Oh, I'm jumping ahead of myself. So in Dune, however, so the term Al-Lat, if you want to know, in the association of Dune, is personification of Earth's sun, if you like. In other words, Sol. And in this case, also can refer to any, we're told, within the terminology of the Imperium, by the way. Sorry, should jump to that first, really, shouldn't I? Al-Lat is man, in the terminology of the Imperium of Dune, we're told that Al-Lat is mankind's original sun, Sol. By usage, any planet's primary, with a full stop. Primary what, Frank? Primary star, we'll say. There we go. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Aphrodite, Venus, Ishtar, Astarte, etc. All of these goddesses, Asherah, Atherat, and also is associated with the mother goddess figures as well. There's tons, really, if you wanted to explore. Al-Lat is how that would be the Greek term from Herodotus, if you like. Check it out. Yeah, a lot of this stuff's pretty interesting. Wikipedia is a really good resource for some of this kind of stuff as well, as long as it's properly referenced. If you want, as long as you're checking your references. If you don't have references or Wikipedia thinks it's a bit dodgy, then go with that. But yeah, some interesting stuff there. So in this case, it refers to this book 32. Where are we? 32 on my little book here. Right, where are we? Sorry. So it's the manual of the friendly desert, the place full of life. Here are the ayat and burhan of life, the signs and proofs of life, if you like. Believe, and Al-Lat, the sun, shall never burn you. There we go. Jessica thinks that this reads like an Azhar book. She thought, recalling her studies of the great secrets. Has a manipulator of religions been on Arrakis? So Azhar here, in this sense, as far as I know, is an Arabic name that can be male or female, and simply radiant, shining, luminous, brilliant, or clear. These various meanings to that name. So reads like a shining book, if you like, in that sense, a book of great secrets. And I think that's just an interesting use of a name there for something that can be mysterious within the Dune universe, another type of book. So we've had a couple of, again, adding to the literature, if you like, of the Dune universe. We've the Azhar book. We've got this little manual of. I think it's a lovely way of putting it, isn't it? What a great name! Where do we go? Sorry, just I find it. 22. You see something right in front of you, and then you can't find it whenever you need it. Yes, the manual of the friendly desert. I think it's a nice way of putting it, isn't it? It's not like how to survive in a really harsh hell world. It's the manual of the friendly desert, the place full of life. I really do like that, I have to say. So Jessica wants, all right, this thinks of Bene Gesserit manipulation, doesn't it? You know, just this little phrase that it comes with this book immediately makes her think, has a manipulator of religions been on Arrakis? Has a member of the Missionaria Protectiva been here? And of course, this is from examining this artifact, this little book. Paul lifts the paracompass from the pack and examines it. Think of all these special application Fremen machines. They show unrivaled sophistication. Admit it. The culture that made these things betrays depths no one suspected. And it kind of makes you wonder why, if you see what I mean. And it's probably just that people don't come in common with the Fremen, or come in contact with the Fremen that often. But certainly, even if we know about their still suits being sold in cities on Arrakis, that theirs are better than the locally made ones, you think that somebody would take an interest in them, maybe even reverse engineer them, this kind of thing. Special application Fremen machines. You know, the wealthiest planet in the universe is all desert. You probably want some good desert kit if you're there. So yeah, these devices show an awful lot about the people that use them. They're tools, if you like. They're cultural artifacts. Oh no. And Chaya says Azar may be a play on the esoteric Zohar. Okay. Don't know that one. Let's have a look. Zohar. Splendor or radiance. Okay. Let's scribble that down. I love words. I really do. Very interested in I think etymology is one of my favorite things. Zohar, literally from Hebrew, splendor or radiance. Hang on a minute. Did I have something like that written down somewhere? Oh no, it's to do with Ecclesiastes. I think it's to do with whenever we get there, again, we'll have a wee chat about the word Ecclesiastes and what it means. And it's the kind of hybrid of a Greek and a Hebrew word, I think. Both kind of meaning the same thing. Thank you very much. Splendor, radiance, radiant, shining lumens. But yeah, so Azar, Zohar. Yeah. Again, I think there's a lot of relationships, I suppose, within language in that part of the world. And I suppose, the Semitic language group, which I don't know too much about, but there's such a commonality and similarity to a lot of languages. Particularly if you're bouncing around in the ancient world, you'd notice it. But in terms of, what did you say there, Chaya? Esoteric. What's that? Rabbinics. Oh, that looks quite lengthy. I'll have to have a wee look at that. So as a foundational work in the literature of Jewish mystical thought known as Kabbalah, it is a group of books including commentary on the mystical aspects of the Torah and scriptural interpretations, as well as material on mysticism, mythical cosmogony, and mystical psychology. The Zohar contains discussions of the nature of God, the origin and structure of the universe, nature of souls, redemption, relationships of ego to darkness, and true self to the light of God. Its scriptural exegesis can be considered an esoteric form of the rabbinic literature known as the Midrash, which elaborates on the Torah. There we go. Excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, there's always words. It's. I'll be honest with you. Whenever we were talking about Alat there, I just give you how many variations did I give you of it? Alatu, Alat, Alalat, and again, is within linguistically and regionally, I suppose, quite a large region. But we've got Ashura, Atherat, and that even things like Astarte are assimilated with the same goddess. And if with translations, I suppose the Herodotus one is Alalat, and we have Elat. If you see what I mean, and goodness gracious, what was it? I think that in my PhD, whenever I had to read all the different variations of Kwisatz Haderach, and I kind of pretty much know that they almost sound very similar, but I really did make a point of overemphasizing when I spoke those words where the changes were, and I got slagged quite badly for my pronunciation, but what the hey, I was have a go at the very least, you know. So there we go. That's another similar word. Zohar in relation to Azhar has the same meaning, and that's in Hebrew. There we go. Thank you very much. I must get that. Yeah. Do you know what I found the other day? I have it's an old thing. We've been bringing up some new books and stuff up here. We've got a complete set of Encyclopedia Britannicas down here. and we have a big, massive 3, and it's a huge multi-language dictionary, the likes that you wouldn't see, gigantic white books. And I opened it up the other day, just thought this could be handy. The writing is so small. I'd need to buy some kind of thing to put it on, and I would need magnifiers to read it. But it's this massive multi-language dictionary it's been given to me by my father-in-law, and it's in 3 volumes. And it looks like a thing of absolute pleasure to muck around with, but it needs to be placed in the writing is so tiny because they've put so much in it. It's one of those things. I'll try to say in there, it's like one of the early books of Jewish mysticism. And there's Cosette saying, "Hey everyone," Cosette saying, "I'm so happy to catch this live again." Hi Cosette, thanks for joining us. Yeah, it's always good when we have a nice wee live audience and stuff. I know some people catch it after hours and after work and stuff like that, but yeah, the more the merrier, I think. So there we go. The little para compass gives Paul a sense of the sophistication of these people. And then we have, right, this is the wee bit that I wanted to get to. So I'm going to run out and grab this. Sorry, I've left this book outside just a very quick second. Hesitating, still worried by the harshness in his voice, Jessica returned to the book and studied an illustrated constellation from the Arakeen sky, Muad'Dib the mouse, and noted that the tail pointed north. Right, bear with me 1 wee second. Let's go grab that book. Somebody in the bathroom. Oh, what's this amazing smell I just got? Watch out, Holly, not. Goodness gracious, that's caused all the dogs to get up. Here we go. Sorry, I wasn't too sure and I didn't have this book handy for now, but I just thought very quickly, while we're talking about Eratosthenes and Hyginus's Hyginus's constellation myths, which is nice just to have a wee quick nosy if we do catch any kind of stellar reference, if you like. I'm not too sure about mice in this one. Let me just have a wee look. And interestingly, the way I've been looking at, I suppose it's the Great Bear that points to Polaris, Ursa Major, isn't it? I'm not seeing any squeaky mice here. Nope. The word is it's different constellations in the ancient world sometimes. Oh, it counts little dog, crabs, lions, Virgo. No. Just let me see if there's anything on squeaky mice. Lapis the hare, Argo, Eridanus. No, I'll have a wee nosy into that. Obviously, Muad'Dib is our kangaroo mouse, and Muad'Dib, I believe, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, would be my profession, because I'm a private tutor occasionally when I'm not doing this stuff. So we're told this is the constellation that Jessica is looking at. Of course, this is the last part of book 1 of Dune, entitled Dune. Part 2 is called Muad'Dib, and arguably it's whenever Paul walks out of this tent, that's the moment he's Muad'Dib, I think. And we'll explain that at the point whenever we get there. So it's just a little bit of foreshadowing, perhaps, for us. We all know, of course, as Dune fans, we all know Muad'Dib the mouse. And it's not just that it's, of course, very smart in the ways of the desert. Its real life equivalent is the jerboa. But also, not only that, there's a shadow of this little animal on the moon, second moon of Arrakis. My shadow on the first moon has a hand. And of course, then in this, we're told also that it occupies a position within Fremen constellations, and its tail points north. So it's a very useful little animal, isn't it? And of course, it's going to have a lot of meaning to Paul. He's going to take its name. Noted that the tail pointed north. Now, let's see. So Paul, staring in the tense darkness at the dimly discerned movements of his mother, revealed by the manual's glow tap. And this is the time, and he says, now is the time to carry out his father's wish. I has to give her this message now. While she has time for the grief, I suppose, and again, his thinking here that grief would be inconvenient later. And I suppose the interesting thing is, are we how shocked are we by Paul's attitude here? It seems a wee bit different, but whether we're shocked if we're not, he's shocked for us. He's actually shocked at his own behaviour, shocked by his precise logic. So, mother, yes, and again she picks up this change in his voice that felt. Oh, I like this bit. Felt coldness in her entrails at the sound. Never had she heard such harsh control. That coldness and always being associated with the cold since she's been on Arrakis is right in her very being, in her entrails. Never had she heard such harsh control. My father is dead, he said. Again, very matter of fact. She searched within herself for the coupling of fact and fact and fact. And this is the wee bit we were talking about earlier, folks. This is the Bene Gesserit. I had asked the question: are there Bene Gesserit mentats? Excuse me. And I wasn't too sure about that, to be honest with you, based on the various abilities. Pardon me. But in this case, we're told this is the way. This is the Bene Gesserit way of assessing data. Linking fact, making chain links, if you like. It's an interesting one. It's kind of a linear thing, isn't it? I would argue, but then again, maybe you can bend it, make a chain bend around. But it's a coupling of fact to fact to fact, that kind of thing. And it came to her. My father is dead, he said. At this point, it's almost a shocking. Yeah, I mean, came to her the sensation of terrifying loss. She nodded, unable to speak. And the word terrifying occurs an awful lot. Words to do with terror, terrifying, Paul's terrible purpose, etc. Quite a lot in this passage, or in this chapter. So here we go. My father charged me once to give you a message if anything happened to him. He feared you might believe he distrusted you. And that useless suspicion, she thought. Tells you what she thought. Useless is what she thought of it. That it, in other words, that the suspicion didn't really. They wanted to run with the suspicion to see if it would flush somebody out, didn't they? And it didn't. It didn't get anyone. It was a useless thing. So Paul tells, and I don't know. I always thought it was quite stupid, to be honest, on Leto's part. He wanted you to know he never suspected you. And that's not actually true. There's a moment of doubt, isn't there? Between there's a moment in doubt. We talked about it. It was quite an eye-opening moment between Leto and Thufir Hawat, where they discussed the possibility that they may have killed Jessica's parents at some point, and it's possible that she's someone's daughter coming for revenge. Very, very House of Atreus, very Palapid, very Once Upon a Time in the West, spaghetti western, that kind of thing. Come back for revenge. You killed my pa. So there is a moment where they think, is it possible? And that to me is it's not absolute. I think his trust and love in Jessica, there is a possibility of suspicion within Leto. But anyway, that's me being a pedant. To let her know that he's always trusted you completely. Let me just read it properly to do Leto's words justice. Let me see. He wanted you to know he always trusted you completely, always loved you and cherished you. He said he would sooner have mistrusted himself, and he had but one regret, that he never made you his Duchess. So there we go. Quite a nice sentiment, I suppose. It's a pity he didn't mistrust himself. He'd probably be still alive, wouldn't it? You've got to have a certain amount of self-doubt, shouldn't you? Just in reality. So, and again, she brushed the tears down her cheeks, and this thought that comes into her mind: what a stupid waste of the body's water. And again, there's that mentality, that Fremen mentality, that Arrakis mentality, and she tells herself in her own mind that this is Why did I think it's an attempt to retreat from grief and anger? And so I think Leto and Jessica really loved Leto. And oh, hang on, I'm jumping ahead of myself here again. What is it she says here in her thoughts? Leto, my Leto, she thought, what terrible things we do to those we love. With a violent motion, she extinguished the little manual's glow tab. Dear, oh dear. So, and I've actually, what terrible things we do to those we love, and Leto question mark is what about? Is that referred to Paul as well? I'm wondering. And sobs shook her. She's crying. And Paul hears his mother's grief and again feels emptiness in himself. I have no grief. Why? Why? And very interestingly, and I think it's a point of great maturity for Paul at this point, who's been a bit teenagery a minute or two ago. He feels that the inability to grieve is a terrible flaw, and he's absolutely correct. And again, at this point, Jessica quotes the OC Bible: "A time to get and a time to lose." Time to get and time to lose, Jessica thought, quoting to herself from the OC Bible: "A time to keep and a time to cast away, a time for love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace." So this is Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. Let's see if I can just bring this up here. Ecclesiastes, let's go 3:1-8 will do. There we go. Grabbing it. God knows what New International Version. Oh, okay. So, time for everything. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. And a time of war and a time of peace. There we go. It's not the best translation there, is it really? Something a bit more poetic really is what you want from Ecclesiastes, I would imagine. There we are. That's much better. There we go. Let's see. Hang on. Time to get and a time to lose. Yeah, that particular line is Ecclesiastes 3:6. A time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away. There we go. Bam. That's what I was being Chaya, what you were saying earlier, the thing that reminded me here. Ecclesiastes is an interesting one. It's one of these hybrid words, an ecclesia in Greeks and the assembly. And as far as I know, kahal, is it in Hebrew, is also an assembly. It's where the word comes from. So the word Ecclesiastes, much as that, really sort of means someone who speaks in front of an assembly, if you like. And that speaker, I believe, is meant to be Colet, which is described as the son of David, which is Solomon. And it's if anybody's not aware, I don't know if anybody's into their. I'm not into the Bible in that way or anything like that. I like ancient books. So that's really where it falls into my purview, is anything that's pretty much ancient. And it's a very well written book, and it's one that I think has been messed with a bit because it doesn't fall in with the message that the Bible wants you to have, I suppose. It's very different. And I'd argue it's probably everything in the New Testament's badly written. Just stinks of rubbish Romans, if you like. Everything in the Old Testament, there's a lot of good writing there, but I'd say that certainly the versions I've read, I'd say Ecclesiastes is probably the best written stylistically book of the Bible. There you go, of the Hebrew Bible. The book is called Colet in Hebrew, written by King Solomon. There you go, Chaya. Thank you very much. Yeah, I know of it from a few different angles, I suppose. From a sort of it's more poetic, and so poetry, particularly in ancient writing, is a thing. It's one of the reasons why the New Testament's so jarring is that the ancient world is full of. I don't know what people would think of this, but the ancient world is full of very well written books. And of course, a Bible is a library of books. A Bible's a library. But the New Testament's really badly written. It's just a bit rubbish. And it's just, you could pull almost anything out of the ancient world and compare to it and go, that flows a lot better. But again, it's down to translation. I've lost touch on some of your comments here, folks, so I'll just catch up for a wee second. Let me see. I'll grab a sip of coffee. Got a cold one and a warm one. I hear the nails of the doggies on the floor. Not half, Cosette. We've got to have, because we're looking after Miss Bo Woofity. She has dwarfism as a Jack Russell, so her front legs are Queen Anne legs, and they're splayed like that. And I'm not joking. She has claws that are like talons. They would put talons on an eagle to shame. And as much as she's a Jack Russell, she's went through a solid wood door with them before. So it's to do with the growth hormone. We have to get our nails cut every month, and we don't have the equipment. That's her pitter-pattering about there. I do apologize. So we're ordering some specialist tools tonight because of that thing. It's one of the interesting things about her. As Jack Russells go, she's very large, but has the tiny little legs at the front. But yeah, her nails would just rip through you if you don't get them done every month, you know. So that's Miss Bo Woofity, she's just snoozing away. we've got two up on the doghouse tonight. I don't know where Noodles is. She's about. But yes, that's our wee doggy, one of our doggies. Travis Price says, "Hey there, been a while, happy to be back." Hi Travis, thanks for joining us. Just running through our comments to catch up here on chapter 22 of Dune. Cynthia says, side point, there's a Bene Gesserit mentat in book 4, maybe a response to the god leader who making mentats illegal. I did figure that they would have mentats. I was wondering about that. And it's just my brain sort of wondering. Again, it's been a while since I've been, again, looking forward to getting through all these books. Princess Bride, says Brad. I lost the context for that one, Brad, but I'm wondering what the context. I do like the Princess Bride. Babs Bello says, yes, Bene Gesserit did have mentats. One, Antioch was sent by Leto II to search out both the Noglub, why it was raised in, but was killed when she found Malky. Ah, right, gotcha. Yes, I've forgotten the name. Yeah. Oh, it's memory, isn't it? I said I'm really looking forward to. I've read Dune a couple of times since, but I haven't got through the rest of the other 5 again. So once we've finished this, I'm looking really forward to tearing into Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune. I'm going to really enjoy it, and I'm really looking forward to getting into the last 2 books, the Bene Gesserit books, and in particular, I'd actually say before we get to the Bene Gesserit books, I'm going to try and get through Kara's book and have a read of that, because I think that's going to be really insightful and quite useful in terms of those 2 books in particular. But there we go. I do remember a lot of the characters in a way. Dario Odrad or Odrade, is it something like that? There's a few. There's Belonda. I remember Belonda. Is that like there's the big? I don't know. There's like the fanatical soldier that hang the God Emperor. Oh yeah, there's that. Yeah, there's that much to remember. Let's have a wee look. Everything turn. Yes, it's the song, isn't it? What's the band? That's what I was thinking on earlier. But I couldn't remember their name. Well, Bird. Oh, I think you know what? My old memory's not so bad. I thought I said it was the Birds or the Yardbirds. Yeah, turn. The Birds, if anyone wants to have a listen, is that it's pretty much Ecclesiastes, isn't it? Just off that, before we get off that point, I suppose. Jesse quotes this Orange Catholic Bible. Ecclesiastes is a book that has I think it's quite popular with science fiction writers. And I'm thinking on a rose for Ecclesiastes, aren't I? Which is, I think, an award winner around with Dune. But it's one of those books that seems to turn up in terms of the Bible. seems to turn up in science fiction a lot, is discussed a lot. Yeah, it's an interesting one. But if anybody, I don't know if anybody would ever read a book for the Bible, just if not if they're a Christian, not just just to read something like that. But Ecclesiastes is worth a read. Or if you're just a fan of poetry, I suppose that it's heavily poetic, I'd say. And so it just depends on what kind of translation you've got. If you could reread or reread any of the books, reread them all, but which one would you choose? Heretics for me. At the minute, I don't know. I would want to reread the ones that are least in my memory, I suppose. So I would say that I remember the first 4 really well, but the last 2 not so much. And that was really just down to the way my research worked out, I suppose. That I never got a chance to look at the Bene Gesserit stuff, and that's where I would have focused. But I enjoy the God Emperor, and I actually think as a little short political thriller, I really like Dune Messiah. But if I could only reread one of the Dune books, I would go with God Emperor because I would enjoy it the most, I think. I'm trying to say the book is called Kohelet in Hebrew. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Written by King Solomon. There you go. Excellent. Travis Price, nice. Great. Travis, I'll give you that Heretics gets better with rereads. I think they all do, to be honest with you. There's Chai and Balonda. I'm looking forward to going through all the books too, because we'll get there if you want to join me. I love this channel. Says there's colleges and cannibals. Message retracted. I wonder what that was about. Laughing out loud. But there we go. Yes, we'll get there with them. I think one of the reasons why I wanted to do 2 chapters a week with Dune, I'm nearly getting caught here on this, just in terms of time, is I really just wanted to get through Dune so quick. Not so quickly, but it's the one book that I have read the most out of a lot, really, because I'm very keen to get to Dune Messiah, and then I'm very happy just to take it as a let's hit Frank Herbert's Dune series. Why not? It'd be interesting, I have to say. And I think particularly with the inversion, you know what I mean? As I say, I always point out this out to people that Dune is an attempt to imprint and then trick the reader by its author. And if you know that, often successfully, I would argue as well. Right. Let's see. Where do we get to? So, yes, quoting the Orange Catholic Bible, Paul's mind goes on with chilling precision. He sees all the avenues ahead of him on this hostile planet, and we're told that it's without even the safety valve of dreaming. And I thought that was quite interesting, that the safety valve does give him the fact that he's dreaming when these things happen, that there's a safety valve that I think it's pretty much that they're in his unconscious, isn't it? It's in his subconscious. Whereas, let me see, without even the safety valve of dreaming, he focused his prescient awareness, seeing it as a computation of most probable futures, but with something more, an edge of mystery, as though his mind dipped into some timeless stratum and sampled the winds of the future. So we've had a fair amount of sort of, I suppose, data gathering terms and stuff like that. We've got stratum and samples and stuff like that there. Data really is the thing that's running with that. Without that, he focuses his prescient awareness, seeing it as a computation of most probable futures. So that's how he looks at it. But something more, always something more with each of these things that Paul might be. He's the mentat something more, something more each time, the quisat sarac, but more. As a computation of all these probable futures, most probable futures. There we go. The edge of mystery about it. That's it. And he says, as though his mind dipped, that there's some sort of timeless stratum that's sampled in the winds of the future. And at this point, it's abruptly, as he says, as if he found a necessary key. What I've written down here is this is where Paul levels up, if you like. His mind basically climbs up a notch of awareness. And as I said, I called it, he's leveled up, but he calls it himself a level, if you like, clinging to this new level, clutching at the precarious hold peering about. There's almost a kind of rock climbing metaphor going on here, isn't there, as well? As much as he climbs that notch of awareness, notches, clinging, clutching, precarious holds. I think with crannies coming up in a bit as well. Excuse me. That's the metaphor, as if he's peering about. And it says as he exists as if he's within a globe with all these avenues radiating in all directions. So we're getting a kind of visual picture from Paul of how this kind of thing is. But even then, we're told it's only an approximation of this sensation. So we can't really understand it. We can't really get a sense of it, even with our, I suppose, our omnipotent narrator. But we're getting a fair go, I suppose. So again, he remembers this. Remembered this gauze handkerchief, right? It's not again. This is the first time we have the handkerchief. Apologies. We'll remember it in the future. How Jude is that? I think that's pretty good. Okay, so he remembered once seeing a gauze kerchief blowing in the wind, and now he sensed the future as though it twisted across some surface as undulant and impermanent as that of the wind-blown kerchief. Chewy. So, yeah, this simile here of this gauze handkerchief. We're going to get the handkerchief being described to us again. I'm wondering, has that got anything to do with possibly? That's the future he sent us. I'm just wondering, there's a sense of, is it Casimir Fenrig? I'm wondering, does he have a kerchief? Can't remember. Bob says, you'll have a good night. I'm off to cook my dinner. No worries, Babs. Thanks for listening. Cosette says, good night. Enjoy your dinner, Babs. Yeah, enjoy. I'm starving, by the way. I'm looking forward to getting a bite to eat later on. So I hope the food's tasty, Babs. Right. Here we go. Undulant, impermanent, out of a wind-blown handkerchief. 42. Right. He sees people. And the way this runs, he feels the hot and cold of uncounted probabilities. And I think this is interesting, the way Herbert gives us kind of three things here. He knew names and places. He experiences emotions without number. He reviews data of innumerable unexplored crannies. And as much as within his own self, Paul says that he's got time to kind of, within this tent at this point in his universe, I suppose, he's got time to probe and test these abilities within his own mind, but no time to shape. No time to shape them, to morph them. This thing. The gauze kerchief reminds me of Leto's last thoughts of the kite flying in the sky and the laughing Paul. Was that his second? I was going to come to that later, actually, but it wasn't that reminded me on his last thoughts. And I've scribbled it down somewhere as well, but we'll get there. But yeah, interesting. Yes, the kite, indeed. I was thinking, it's to do with the map and territory. I know that's the wee dream, that's the hallucination he has, isn't it? Imagining Paul. Hang on, because I drew a kite here. Let me see if we back up a bit. Where's the death of Leto? There's Leto dead there. Let's see. The last thought. So prior to that, he has the thought of the tooth ended all so quickly. Still, it had been good. He's talking about his life. It had been a good life, much of this life. And he remembers the antenna kite up dangling the shell blue sky of Caledon. Paul laughing with joy. Sunrise on Arrakis. No, that's not his last one. It's his last thoughts are. One thought remained to him. Leto saw it as formless lights of rays on black, and it is the day the flesh shapes and the flesh the day shapes. And it struck him with a sense of fullness, which is grokking, and that's him dead, isn't it? So it was that one that I was thinking on, but we haven't come to it yet. Cynthia. But yeah, in that sense, absolutely, the gauze kerchief, definitely. And it's wind blown, isn't it? Like a kite, I suppose. It would remind you of the kite. Very good. Let me scribble that down. It's worth a meaty note. Like Cage. Okey-dokey. Excellent. Thank you very much. Everyone's saying bye, Babs. Catch you later, Babs. Okay. So, yeah, here we go. No time to probe or test the thing. Sorry, it's time to probe and test the thing, but no time to shape it, to make it his own. This thing. It's interesting when we have the word thing used as well within this book, I suppose. The thing is a spectrum of possibilities. He can move from his most remote past to the most, or sorry, not his, from the most remote past to the most remote future, from the most probable thing to the most improbable thing. Paul sees his own death in countless ways. He sees new planets, new cultures, people. Swarms, so many people they can't be listed, and yet his mind, we're told, catalogued them all. And then we get this little bit, even the guildsmen. Now, this is important. Okay, and he thought, the guild, there'd be a way for us. My strangeness accepted as a familiar thing of high value, always with an assured supply of the now necessary spice. And that's really interesting. This is Paul's way out, one of them anyway. So once he's starting seeing all these possible futures, all these different peoples within it, that kind of thing, he also notes there's guildsmen there. And of course, we'll learn a bit about the guilds, sort of their kind of limited prescience, if you like. But in what he's saying is here, there's a way for us. That's a way out, a way to survive. My strangeness, his abilities, would be accepted as a familiar thing of high value. So something similar to what the guild have in turn. This is about guild navigation, isn't it, really? Always with an assured supply of the now necessary spice. If he does run anywhere in the universe, he has to always, because of his time on Arrakis, the level of saturation of this spice into his blood, he is a melange addict now. And that as long as he keeps taking it, he's good. The minute he stops, like anyone else, withdrawal will equal death. The now necessary spice, both him and his mother are now spice addicts. And this thought appalls him. Quite rightly. The idea of living out his life in the mind groping ahead through possible futures that guided hurtling spaceships appalled him. It was a way, though, and in meeting the possible future that contained guildsmen, he recognized his own strangeness. So it's definitely that he could be the equivalent of a very powerful guild navigator, I suppose. Guild steersman, who knows? And he doesn't like the look of that at all. But it does allow him to recognize his own abilities, his own strangeness, and understand that there again, it's not the same as the guild. He's a bit different. He could be accepted as a familiar thing, but not the same. Something familiar about him. I have another kind of sight, he says. I see another kind of terrain, the available paths. Now, I've put a wee note here again that this is the sort of general semantics kind of thing. And I think it's in some ways maybe to do with, we talk about the handkerchief as well, the topography of, if you like, of the handkerchief. We'll have a wee look in a minute. But general semantics, this idea that I have another kind of sight, I can see another kind of terrain. And again, it's just running with this concept of the map is not the territory, which is associated with general semantics. So I suppose paradoxically, this awareness gives him both reassurance and causes him some alarm. And that there are so many places within this terrain that certain things seem to dip or are turned out of sight, if you like. So again, we're getting a sense of how this works for Paul. And it must be quite strange to us, the reader, I suppose. This is a very unusual thing to have explained to you. There's so many places on that other kind of terrain dipped or turned out of his sight. As swiftly as it had come, the sensation slipped away from him, and he realized that the entire experience had taken the space of a heartbeat. So everything that's just kind of all of this stuff that we've just been through has just happened like that for Paul. And it's over. It's just, wow, okay. Swiftly as it came, it's gone. And his own personal awareness, yeah, a heartbeat has passed. And, all right, I'm looking at the wrong one here. He stares around him. Night still covered the still tent with its rock-enclosed hideaways. His mother's grief could still be heard. And his own lack of grief, again, could still be felt. Now, there we are. Bear with me, folks. So he describes like a hollow place somewhere separated from his mind, and that's the grief, I think. The grief is the hollow place that's separated from his mind. Let me see. And his mind goes on. It's still doing this. We're told it goes on at a steady pace, dealing with data, evaluating, computing, submitting answers in something like the Mentat way. Now, we're told that Paul has a wealth of data available to him that few have ever encompassed. The empty place in his head is no easier to bear. Sorry, let me just see that. This made the empty place within him no easier to bear. He felt that something must shatter. And we use this simile here. It was as though a clockwork control for a bomb had been set ticking in him. That would be a a timer, in other words. Goes about its business. This clockwork thing that's in his mind just seems to go about his business no matter what he wants. Oh, you okay, wee pet? It's all right. Excuse me one wee second. You're okay. Hang on. All right. Just have a wee bad drink. There you go. That's a good girl. Sorry about that, folks. Wee doggy's having a wee nightmare. You okay? Ah, she's good. There we go. Sorry about that. Now, oh dear. So this is I will go. We'll catch the rest of the discussion later. No problem, Cynthia. Have a good day, says Cosette. Yeah, and again, apologies for being on a wee bit late, folks, tonight. Just we wouldn't have got this done. Otherwise, it was just really to allow us to get to the end of this chapter. So we'll be at our 9 p.m. GMT +1 slot as usual next time. But I just, I thought it better to be an hour late and get the thing done, I thought, rather than disappoint everyone. Yeah, it felt something that, so this clockwork control, this thing is like a clockwork control for a bomb set ticking in him. It goes about its business no matter what he wants. It's something, it's like a tick, 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 tick thing going away there. And we're told that this thing, the way he describes it, it's like a clockwork control. How does he put it here? Let's see. It recorded minuscule shadings of difference around him, a slight change in moisture, a fractional fall in temperature, the progress of an insect across the still tent roof, the solemn approach of dawn in the starlight patch of sky. You could see out the tent's transparent end. There we go. The emptiness is unbearable. Knowing how the clockwork had been started makes no difference to him. So it's an odd kind of little analogy. This is things like a old simile. Sorry, that's like a ticking. How does he put it again? As a clockwork control for a bomb, a timer. If you see what I mean. And that this is how he describes this thing going off in his head, and it seems to have he's got a bit of a reprise from it for a moment, and he looks to his own past to see the start of it. Doesn't make any difference, and there it is. What brought him here? So he's looking back. It's a range of things. It's his training, the sharpening of these talents, the refined pressures, the sophisticated disciplines. Oh, sorry, sophisticated disciples is the word here. I thought that was an odd word. Where are we? 49. the training, the sharpening of talents, the refined pressures of sophisticated disciples. Not too sure what that. I was wondering, was that a misprint? Disciplines, perhaps. Even exposure to the Orange Catholic Bible at a critical moment. And lastly, the heavy intake of spice. And so that's him looking to the past. What is the things that have kind of made me who I am now? Looking to the past. This is the thing. Looking forward, he says, though, is the most terrifying direction. To see where it all points. The future. You know. It's an interesting point. I live in a country where everyone, politically, religiously, socially, is backward. They look backward, looking backwards all the time, and understanding that is that it's a real fear that you can't face the future yourself. People in this country have to look to either England for answers or Ireland for answers, their governments and religions respectively, because they can't be bothered to do it themselves. So I live in a society that's retarded atavism, looking back, delaying your growth to be like your grandfathers, if you like, is what the term means. So the scary directions in the future. Here we go again. This moment, and it's I'm a monster, he thought, a freak. No, he said then. No, no, no. And the words are getting bigger on the page. We go from no, then a no with a full stop, then a no with an exclamation mark, then a no, all capitals with an exclamation mark, shouting. And self-pity, anger, all of this coming through, pounding on the floor with his fists, having a bit of a Will Smith. And it is another teenage moment, isn't it? I think it's the teenage moments here for Paul that make you really pity him. That you have to have some sympathy for this young lad. He found that he was pounding the tent floor with his fists, and I like this bit. The implacable part of him recorded this as an interesting emotional datum and fed it into computation. He's even making note of his own irrational behavior. Not that I would say his behavior is irrational at this point. It's probably quite justified. So it's drawing the attention of Jessica, Paul, his mother beside him, holding his hands, her face a grey blob, peering at him. Paul, what's wrong? I'm going to go with that's one of Herbert's bad stylizations, if you like, or styling. He seems to run with the grey blob thing quite a bit. Whenever with Leto, the bodies of Mapes and Turek or grey blobs. Various people. It's about the fourth or fifth time and it's really lazy writing. That's all. It's a grey blob is about as amorphous and blobby as you can get, I think, and there's nothing else. It's a bit sloppy, I think. I would have thrown in a few more adjectives at the very least there, just to go with grey blob. I would have even went with amorphous, if you like. But anything, something, it's a bit weak. Especially as we hear it quite a lot. Oh, no. Bear with me a wee second. Let's see where we're at. Still plenty to get. Oh, we're making good time, folks. I think we're plenty to get through yet. But I'm a monster. I'm a freak. And the term freaks make me think of Tiger again. In that sense, it's an interesting term. Probably maybe this is a thing from the 60s as well. So, Paul, what's wrong? His mother's trying to draw him out of this, and to him, her face seems to be a bit of a grey blob peering at him. You, he said. I'm here, Paul, she said. It's all right. What have you done to me? He demanded. In a burst of clarity, she sensed some of the roots in the question. Said, I gave birth to. And this is good. This is now we've almost been talking about how Jessica seems slow compared to Paul, and that that the son is suddenly outclassing his mother mightily here. But this is a moment where she comes back in. I think her abilities are. She's thinking a bit clearer. She gets a sense of Paul here. What have you done to me? It's an accusatory question. And we can see her fear building up here. I think, in this chapter of Paul. But in a burst of clarity, she sensed some of the roots. She understands what's behind the question and says, I gave birth to. Now, we're told here, this is the clever bit, I suppose, it was from instinct as much as her own subtle knowledge. And that's going to be important, I think, a wee bit later on. Instinct and with Jessica, especially to do with Alia and her choices, I think. Or maybe we already got that bit. No, I don't think we have. Yeah, no, I don't think we're there yet, actually. I gave birth to this answer from instinct as much as her own subtle knowledge is precisely the correct answer to calm Paul down. And that's what I liked about that, and it works. He felt her hands holding him, focusing on her face. And again, we see here we go, the gene traces in her facial structure, noted in a new way, provides him with a final summation and answer to be put forward. There's something about her face. And again, it's almost as if these calculations, these questions are rising within his consciousness without him wanting them to be there, I suppose, but they're happening anyway. The clues, so just to read this wee bit, it's quite important. Certain gene traces in her facial structure were noted in the new way by his on-flowing mind. The clues added to other data and a final summation answer put forward. Let go of me, he said. She heard the iron in his voice, obeyed. Do you want to tell me what's wrong, Paul? And we get these questions from him. Did you know what you were doing when you trained me? And this is that point here. We were talking about the hints of the self-pity, the anger, the teenage moments, if you like, that still tell us that Paul's a bit of a kid, that he's a child. Well, this is the end of it here. For Jessica, there's no more childhood here. Let me just get exactly where we're at here. This is 53, my notes. There's no more childhood in his voice, she thought. And that's a sad moment for a mother, I'm sure, that this isn't my child is not a child anymore. And she said, I hope the thing any parent hopes, that you'd be superior, different. Different's a much better answer than superior, isn't it? He picks up on different. And the bitterness is in tone, Paul. I mean, if you want to go and think about when Dune is being written, and a lot of people would say Dune's a product of the 60s. It's not. It's being written in the 50s. It takes 5 years to write. So as much as that book, Dune, comes out in 1963, I think Herbert's definitely been at it since at least 58. So there's some sensibilities from the 50s. I think there's some leftovers obviously from World War II, from, again, Hitler is going to be one of these kind of Camelot pattern dangerous heroes for the German people, this kind of thing. And what was I thinking there? Yeah, it's superior. Again, the major theme of Dune is evolution. The major focus of its own study and desire to sort of present different alternatives for the human race. It's evolution here. The term superior, and super meaning above, if you like. Super and sub within Latin are prefixes, above and below. This is really kind of oh, hang on, we'll get to that in a second. Sorry, let me see. Yeah, it's the idea of Paul being, I suppose, the superhuman. We have ideas of Ubermensch, Superman, Overman, the Van Voghten here, all of that kind of stuff. It's kind of important. Have we got another typo? Oh, your doggy had a nightmare. Mine do too. I have a really bad snoring dog as well. Yeah, they don't have them too often, but they're easily settled. Mine says disciplines. All right, okay. Here we go. Why I oughta. What company is this? Hodder. God, they should hire me, shouldn't they? Let's see. Mine says disciplines. We got another one. Oh, my head's pounding tonight. Right, let me see. Sophisticated. Yeah. There we go. 49. Backtrack. Hang on. I make a note of where I'm at. There. That's where we're at, so I don't lose it. And yours says disciplines. That sophisticated disciples does not make any sense. There we go. We're not losing out, are we? Honestly, I don't know what's happened with this print of this book, and it is disciplines. You've got is that the 1965 one you've got there, Chaya? Let me have a wee quick look. Chapter that shouldn't be too hard to find. And this one is worth checking. Sadly, folks, just to let you know what's going on is that the edition that I'm actually working from, this one, which is the we've just been discovering as we go, is riddled with misprints, and we even have like major characters' names spelt wrong consistently throughout the book. Absolutely appalling. But it looks like we've just run into another one here. And yeah, it just didn't seem to make sense for me. I have another copy that I don't write on at all. Don't like even pens being near it. Let's just see. But on the crucial one, there it is. That's the Yep, sophisticated disciplines makes complete sense. Same here. Honestly, I really have picked the wrong edition to go with, haven't we? It's sitting actually questioning, does that make sense? That must be a misprint. It is. Thank you very much, Chaya. Indeed. Ridiculous. So we were just talking there, the things from when Paul's looking to his past, the things that bring him to this point. We were told it was the training, the sharpening of talents, the refined pressures of sophisticated disciplines. And in my book, it says disciples. But there we go. That's our misprint of the day, isn't it? It's appalling. It's the reason. It's not that it doesn't happen within books or publishing, errata and stuff like that. That's not why it's appalling. It's appalling because how many years are we down the publishing road with this book? The amount of times this book has been published and republished and republished. They really should have things like this. I don't think they're old mistakes. I think they're new ones, to be honest with you, which is pretty bad. So there we go. Leveling up. Where do we just to fix my notes here, folks? But yeah, just disciples, disciplines, sophisticated disciplines. There we are. And that was 49. There you are. Right. Disciplines. There we go. Fix that in my notes too. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's becoming a real. It's not a pain really, but there's enough things that need to be figured out and interpreted in this without trying to figure out if every word is spelt correctly. Cosette says, Chaya, yes, you're catching all the typos and misprints. Great job. Absolutely. Cosette says, as I've said previously, I think there's probably a bit of Frank Herbert dealing with the eugenics situation. Yes, 1965. Absolutely. And that's your addition, Chaya. Yeah, thank you very much. Let's see. Yeah, just keeps occurring, I suppose. Well, we'll not worry about it too much. And I've made a wee note of where we got to, so let me find out where that is. I'll put a big star on my notes. Oh goodness, still plenty to go then. Right, okay. Yeah, superior. Or is it superior? What did I hear that a minute? I was just thinking of those kind of things. Eugenics is a big part of this, I suppose, as well. It has to be. There's different aspects of it, but I still think it's the one theme that Herbert sticks with all the way through all 6 books, We lose the ecology one a bit, and we also lose the dangerous hero. Well, we'll never be quite sure what the iteration of that was going to be. But there we go. No more childhood in Paul's voice. I hope the thing any parent hopes you'd be superior is not a thing I'd really. I suppose we want all our kids to be better. All of us want our kids to be better than us, I suppose. But that doesn't mean superior. To be different is what I think every human being should aspire to, rather than unity, conformity, or anything like that. To be your own unique individual self is the best that you can go for and should go for. I believe, be yourself. Don't worry about other people. Different's fine. Different isn't wrong. Superior, that's a bit, we're into Nazi supermen are our masters kind of territory, aren't we? Dear oh dear. On a closer look, Chaya says it's a Berkeley medallion paperback printed in 1975. 65 is Frank Herbert's copyright date. I'd seen somebody talking about the Berkeley medallion books, because the other day there's ones that I wouldn't have seen over here at all, in terms of covers. Just talking about types of editions of Frank Herbert's Dune that it's easy to get here. Pardon me, but I've never owned a full set with all the same cover. It makes it tricky. So it's okay to be different, but superior. I think this is the word superior the wrong word there. Possibly is that why she adds different? They certainly don't mean the same thing. And again, I suppose Paul picks up on different rather than superior. I suppose because again, these people are royalty, aren't they? Maybe he's used to being, that they are superior in their own tiny little minds. Dear oh dear. That's why I live in a country with a monarchy, so there we go. Tiny minds is what it's all about. Oh yeah, sorry, right, bear with me. I'm just trying to figure out. Lost my place there a second. There we go. Right, different. That's it. Sorry, just lining one book up with the other here. No more childhood. Right, that's it. Superior. So Paul says different ? Different. And she picks up again all the tones picked up by Jessica here. She hears the bitterness in his tone. Paul, you didn't want a son, he said. You wanted a Kwisatz Haderach. You wanted a male Bene Gesserit. Again, Jessica recoils from his bitterness. But Paul says, but Paul, did you ever consult my father in this? And of course, Jessica responds, whatever you are, Paul, the hereditary is as much your father as it is mine, but not the training, not the things. And here we get this phrase that awakened the sleeper. Sleeper, she asks. Yes, indeed. And she heard, oh, sorry, it's here, he said. He put a hand on his head and then to his breast. In me, it goes on and on and on. And Paul, she interrupts him there. And almost for a wee bit there, when he says it goes on and on and on, and I thought, is that him almost in a kind of mental feedback loop? Jessica interrupts him here because she hears the hysteria edging his voice. And hysteria is always an interesting word, and in this case, it's applied to Paul as a man. There we go. So it's one of those kind of terms that is a bit loaded and has an interesting history to it. You wanted the Reverend Muller to hear about my dreams. Will you listen in her place now? Paul tells her, I've had a waking dream. Do you know why? Well, that's the spice. Here we go. And we're going to get a good bit about melange's properties here as well. We've learned a little bit about it before. The spice, it's in everything here. It's in the air. It's in the soil. It's in the food. And we get the term, the geriatric spice. It's the truth-sayer drug as well. It's a poison. She stiffened. And this is a bit of knowledge, I suppose, Bene Gesserit knowledge. though arguably it should be common knowledge that, for example, all drugs, all medicines are poisons. On some level, that's the truth. And if you understand that, that's to do with what the Bene Gesserit do, particularly with these, things like the bile of the newborn worms of Arrakis, etc. How the water of life thing, that transformation, it's about making a poison molecularly safe, basically. That's all. Changing its molecules inside the body. Now, it's the spice. It's in everything. The spice changes. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I've jumped ahead again. Apologies. She stiffened. His voice lowered, repeated, a poison so subtle, so insidious, so irreversible. And here we go. People often talk about, should I take melange if I was on Arrakis? It is fatal. We've discussed that withdrawal from melange is fatal. Here's the sentence that tells you so. It won't even kill you unless you stop taking it. So you stop. Withdrawal from Arrakis, withdrawal from melange is fatal. As long as you keep taking it, you're fine. But if you stop, it will kill you. And we can't leave Arrakis unless we take a part of Arrakis with us. Now, somebody mentioned that we were talking about the handkerchief. Was it you, Cynthia? Cynthia said earlier that the gauze handkerchief reminds me of Leto's last thoughts, the flying in the sky and the laughing Paul. It was the thought just before his last thoughts. And this is the bit, Cynthia, that reminded me of Leto's last thoughts. Let me see, where are we? Yes, it's this sentence here. We can't leave Arrakis unless, where are we? We can't leave Arrakis unless we take part of Arrakis with us. And I just thought that there had a sense of the same sort of feeling as Leto's last words. The day the flesh shapes, and the flesh the day shapes, that kind of thing. Not exactly the same, but I got the same sense from the two statements, if you like, that there was the day and the flesh, the body and the world, if you like, the body and time. And in this case, Arrakis. We can't leave unless we take some of the planet. The planet is forever a part of them. Don't know what you think about that one. Just about a speculation. Pardon me. So Paul, there's a terrifying presence of his voice. There's no dispute from Jessica. The control in his voice here is terrifying presence of his voice. Brooked no dispute. There we go. You and the spice, Paul said. So it's quite accusatory, isn't it? You and the spice. The spice changes anyone who gets this much of it. But thanks to you, I could bring the change to consciousness. I don't get to leave it in the unconscious where, excuse me, where its disturbance can be blanked out. I can see it. Pardon me. So that's this thing. He's not able to just sort of bury it at the back of his mind. It's awakened his consciousness. It's fully there, and it's fully in his consciousness. He can see it. He can see what it does. Let me see. I can see it. Now, and Paul, I see it, he repeated. Again, he can see this. And here we go. She hears the madness in his voice. And she doesn't know what to do. He speaks again, and the controls return. So he's kind of wobbling a bit here, isn't he? He's this teenage boy who's suddenly having all these mental powers kick in and trying to see what he can do with them and what he's learning and what, we're trapped here because of the space. Yeah, and she agrees. Yeah, we're trapped here. And she accepts the truth of his words. No pressure of the Bene Gesserit, no trickery, no artifice can get them completely free from this planet. No matter what, spice is addictive. Her body has known this long before her mind woke up to it. So that's it. There's nothing anybody can do in relation to how they're going to have to relate to this planet from now on. Part of them is always going to be associated with that, and they are spice addicts simply by living on this planet the way they have. So let me see. So the option is going to live their lives on this hell planet, is the term, and this place has been prepared. She accepted the truth of his words, etc. So here we live out our lives, she thought, on this hell planet. The place, pardon me, but I went, the place is prepared for us if we can evade the Harkonnens, and there's no doubt of her course. Now, this is interesting. Here we go. This is Bene Gesserit, I suppose, associations, plans, and thinking. Yeah. Okay, where are we? Here's my wee note. Sorry, just lost my place. Wrong note. There we go. 59, one back. There's no doubt of my course, she says. A broodmare, preserving an important bloodline for the Bene Gesserit plan. That's what she sees her course. To preserve the Atreides line for the Bene Gesserit breeding program. So, which is, I don't know, it's one of those things that it starts to make me wonder about Jessica's motivations within the Bene Gesserit, etc. We're going to get a little bit about that as well. But she's a very much go there report to the BG, isn't she? I think, even though she's been disobedient to them before, it's a bit paradoxical how she behaves with them. Paul, again, back to Paul's waking dream. We haven't heard about it yet. Paul said, now there was fury in his voice. He's angry. To be sure you accept what I say, I'll tell you first, I know you'll bear a daughter, my sister here on Arrakis. Now, Jessica places her hands against the tent floor. She's pressed back against the curving fabric walls so to still a pang of fear. She's scared of him at this point. She knew her pregnancy could not show yet. Only her Bene Gesserit training had allowed her to read the first faint signals of her body, to know of the embryo only a few weeks old. And what we get from her is only to serve. Jessica whispered, clinging to the Bene Gesserit motto. So this is the Bene Gesserit motto: we exist only to serve. So this is what she, in the face of her son revealing that he somehow knows that she is pregnant with his what's going to be his sister, this knowledge is terrifying here. She's pushing back. How does he know this? Only to serve. We exist only to serve. So it's almost like falling back on ritual or something. It's a motto. And it's like she's lost for words, just falls upon this old motto. Just that's all that comes out here. And again, it seems a wee bit strange. But Jessica's under an awful lot of pressure here. We'll find a home amongst the Fremen, Paul said, where your missionary protectiva has brought us a bolt hole. So he's kind of revealing that he knows what's been going on here a bit. They've prepared a way for us in the desert, Jessica told herself, but how can he know of the missionary protectiva? How does Paul know this? And unfortunately, it's at this point where Paul is knowing certain things about her. How does he know this? It's starting to make her really, really terrified. She found it increasingly difficult to subdue her terror at the overpowering strangeness in Paul. He studied the dark shadow of her, seeing her fear and every reaction with his new awareness as though she were outlined in blinding light. The fear in his awareness is lighting her up, and it finally gives him a bit of compassion. We're told a beginning of compassion for her crept over him. Any chance of a break? Oh, you head on the bed, love. No worries. I'll try and keep it down. We're not. We're pushing on. Thanks. I've got my juice here. In fact, I tell you what, folks. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a wee quick loo break. It's just we're just hit half past midnight. We're going to push on. We shouldn't be too much longer. Hopefully, maybe about another half an hour or so. But give me a wee break for a wee second, folks. And I'll just go and sort myself out and be right back. Also need to blow my nose. Alrighty, push that. Crack on to the Luda. Cue music, incense. I'm working on something like that actually, folks. Where I'm hopefully going to be able to next time, whenever I take a wee break, I'm going to be able to play a bit of music or something for you. You never know. But yes, I'll have to try and keep it down a wee bit because everybody's heading to bed here because we're a bit late tonight, and I'm so loud. Unfortunately, my voice really does carry right through things. So we will push on and just try to get to the end tonight of this chapter. It's exposition heavy, isn't it? But it is a good chapter, and in terms of seeing a character sort of like this become a kind of this superhuman Kwisatz Haderach thing, it's not something that we ever sort of get. I suppose details like this in a lot of books, But there we go. But it's a very interesting chapter. I have my own little criticisms of it. I think how Paul looks at data, or how Frank Herbert looks at data, wouldn't line up with I suppose how I look at data as a computer scientist. But one of those things. But on the whole, yeah, this is kind of interesting, and we're getting this build, isn't it? It's a very tense. Almost get the sense that Paul's about to lose it, but somehow he's kind of keeping it together. Even with Jessica's responses being the right response here, just that right thing to say, I think helps him keep it together a little bit. But yeah, she's pretty terrified, resorts to this motto, and he says to her, "We'll find a home amongst the Fremen, where your missionary Protectiva has bought us a bolt hole. They've prepped away in the desert. How could he know of this?" She said. Sorry, just catching up again. Subdued her terror and the overpowering strangeness of Paul. So we were just saying there, he studied her and sees this fear like in every direction, like an outlined in blinding light around her, in the dark shadow over in the tent, and he starts to get a bit of compassion again. A beginning of compassion for her crept over him. This is his mother, and it's almost, this is all your fault, and it kind of is in a way, sort of, but yeah, it's the same sort of way any child blames their parents for certain things that are, I suppose, beyond their control. The things that can happen here, he tells her, I cannot begin to tell you. I can't even begin to tell myself, really, even though I've seen them. The things that just happen, and this sense that he has the sense of the future, he's got no control over it. And he talks about the immediate future. And this is the bit where Paul kind of explains how it works, I suppose. Um, he talks about a year down the road, doesn't he? Here, the immediate future, say a year. I can see some of that. It's a road as broad as our central avenue on Caladan. Some places I don't see, shadowed places, as though it went behind a hill. Again, that kind of something moving behind something topographically, that kind of thing. Um, and again, he thought of, and here we go, again, he thought of the surface of a blowing handkerchief, and there are branchings, That's just what I was kind of thinking on. Just this sort of blowing, the topography of something like this moving, and how you can, that kind of, yeah, why not? There we go, visual guide. Not quite a handkerchief, but just a thing for cleaning my glasses. It's always my mum's fault laughing out loud. And if it's not your mum's fault, it's probably your dad's. Excuse me, pardon me. So yeah, there's our kerchief again. And there are branchings, he says. He felt a memory of that seeing felt him. So he's kind of remembering having his first memory of that thing. This is no prescient dream, and nothing has ever prepared him for here we go, the totality with which the veil had been ripped away to reveal naked time. So it's not even just that I got the merest glimpse. It's he's gone from maybe being able to see just the appearance to everything. It's all encompassing. And recalling this experience, here we go. This is the key term, really. He recognized his own terrible purpose. So we've had this sense of what is Paul's terrible purpose, etc. There's this pressure on his life that's been spreading through his life and expanding, described like an expanding bubble while time is retreating before it. And we're going to get us what his terrible purpose is, actually, really, in a sense. And again, we get this Jessica framed in the green light of the tent's glow tab. Let's see, just have a look at this bit. Bring this over here. Now, it drives back the shadows and it eases her fear. So just again, a little bit of this green light that keeps kind of framing things. And she sees Paul. She looks at his eyes and she sees this inward stare, and she knows that she's seen this kind of look before. So this is what she tells us. It's pictures and records of disasters on the faces of children who experienced starvation or terrible injury. The eyes were like pits, mouth a straight line, cheeks indrawn. It's the look of terrible awareness, she thought, of someone forced to the knowledge of his own mortality. He was indeed no longer a child. And that's reinforcing that. And again, this is so really in terms of that, this is our coming of age moment, really, for Paul. Within this tent, and it also, as I said, whenever we get into the next chapter, after we move into the first chapter, but we leave this figure, it marks a kind of rebirth for him as well. Excuse me. And I thought I thought when I was saying this the last time that we'd have to have a look at a section from the Dragon in the Sea. It'll be to do with that. So whenever we get to that part in the book, we're going to dig out the Dragon in the Sea, Frank Herbert's first book, and just sort of show you something that kind of is, I'd argue, is almost a dry run for this. And again, it's a sphincter birth, if you like. It's to do with sphincters and birth canals and this kind of thing. Though in that context, it's to do with the submarine and being born into water, if you like, rather than Paul being born into sand here. No longer a child, indeed. The import of Paul's words. Where are we? The underlying import of his words began to take over her mind. Pushing all else aside, Paul could see ahead a way of escape for them. So there's a way to evade the Harkonnens, she said. And again, his response here, the Harkonnens, with a big exclamation mark. He sneered, put those twisted humans out of your mind. He stared at his mother, studying the lines of her face in the light of the glow tab. The lines betrayed her. Hmm. Let me just see. Aye, here we go. Bear with me a wee second. Sorry. 66. Lines between. She says. She said you shouldn't refer to people as humans without. And I wonder what she was going to say there. Because he goes the Harkonnens. He sneered. Um. Hmm. How do I put this? I suppose. Put those twisted humans out of your mind. You shouldn't refer to people as humans without. And I've put what? Actually, I've written a question, and I'm wondering: is this one of our little, very little, subtle clues here? Let me just look at it again here. The Harkonnens, put those twisted humans. You talk about twisted mentats, twisted humans out of your mind. You shouldn't refer to people as humans without what? I was wondering, is it including yourself in that group? But he says, don't be so sure you know where to draw the line. I don't know what that means really there. Is it I think is it Paul's not and no can we consider that Paul's no longer human here? When he's talking about referring to those twisted humans, put those twisted humans out of your mind. Well, Jessica says you shouldn't refer to people as humans without, and we don't know quite what's going to come next there. But it's a suggestion that there's subhuman, if you see what I mean. We've talked about superior in this, and is Paul human anymore? I suppose is the interesting question by the end of this chapter. Is he a human? Yeah, it's one of those ones I just don't know what. Wonder what that's what we talk about. I wonder what Frank was, what she. I really do want to know what she was going to say there, what Jessica was going to say, and she gets cut off. But it's got something to do with, I suppose, considering the humanity or the inhumanity of your enemies, this kind of thing, possibly. And here it comes. Actually, it's the revelation, isn't it? This is one of our mysteries of Dune, and it'll stay a mystery actually because it's not fully explained here. Excuse me. Don't be so sure you know where to draw the line. We carry our past with us. And mother mine, there's a thing you don't know and should. We are Harkonnens. There we go. Dun, 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 dun. Big reveal. Something you should know and you don't. I also made a wee note there that he calls her mother mine, which I would suggest is possessive, but she is his mother. Sometimes you can read too much into these things, but he's going to repeat that phrase. And we always talk about, and I think I might have missed this out, by the way, that whenever Paul was relaying his father's message to Jessica, my father always wanted you to know he regretted not making you his duchess. Again, they're always possessive pronouns, if you like. So there you go. We're Harkonnens. Oh, wow, that's an interesting one. And there's something very nice coming up here. I'll point it out in a wee second here that you might find interesting. Here we go. It's right here. Her mind. Now, Jessica's response is her mind did a terrifying thing. It blanked out as though it needed to shut off all sensation. And I'm just wondering, is that a Bene Gesserit imprint? We see this kind of thing in Dune. Has Jessica been conditioned to shut down and not think about this if someone brings it up? It's quite possible, isn't it? But it's the way her brain works here. It's not kind of anything we really see from Jessica. You know, it's certainly even with these circumstances. Her mind did a terrifying thing. It blanked out, as though it needed to shut off all sensation. It's like her brain shutting down when he says, "We are Harkonnens." But Paul's voice went on, and at that implacable pace, dragging her with it. And again, his voice doing this, if you like. When next you find a mirror, study your face. Study mine now. The traces are there if you don't blind yourself. Look at my hands, the set of my bones, and if none of this convinces you, then take my word for it. I've walked the future, I've looked at record, I've seen a place, I have all the data. We're Harkonnens. There you go. Now, the wee bit I just wanted to point out, if you, the traces are there if you don't blind yourself. So that, I think, is a very much a direct reference to the Oedipus myth. And in this sense, that's a reference to Jocasta. So, of course, Jocasta is the wife of Laius, isn't it? So whenever Oedipus kills his father, then that's why Oedipus is called Tyrannus, because Tyrannus is an usurper. Then he kills his father. He gets to become the king of Thebes and has the previous king's wife to be his own. So that happens to be Jocasta, who is in reality his biological mother. So yeah, no, I'm getting, hang on. Trying to remember my Oedipus myth. That's Jocasta, and it's Oedipus as well, isn't it? It's an inversion. So Jocasta hangs herself upon discovering that Oedipus is her husband, is her son. It's Oedipus himself who blinds himself. He blinds himself. So the traces are there if you don't blind yourself. I thought was a very obvious. Maybe I'm just thinking that, but I thought it was a very obvious nod to the Oedipus myth. There we go. Bojack Harkness, seen a place. Context, Bojack. Not sure what you mean, my friend. A renegade. We're Harkonnens, and then she starts to. The brain kicks back in here, doesn't it? Seen a place. I wonder what that was about. No, the community team member for future looked at the record. Sorry, gotcha. I'm back with you, Bojack. None of that convinces you. Take my word for it. I've walked the future. I've looked at a record. I've seen a place, possibly where she was conceived, if you like. I have all the data. We're Harkonnens. And so she tries to figure this one. Brain's maybe kicking in a bit slow here. A renegade branch of the family. That's it, isn't it? Some Harkonnen cousin who, nothing. So she thinks it's maybe some weird tangent or something that's just come into the family line. No, you're the Baron's own daughter, which makes him, of course, Paul's grandfather. And here we go. We're told all about this. Apparently, the Baron liked to sample many pleasures in his youth. The Baron sampled many pleasures in his youth and once permitted himself to be seduced. We talk about those phrases, don't we, that people allow themselves, permit themselves, or deny themselves things a lot in this book. But in this case, the once permitted himself to be seduced, but it was for the genetic purposes of the Bene Gesserit by one of you. And the way he said "you" struck her like a slap. And this sets her mind working. There's so many blank ends, obviously to do with her past. So many blank ends of meaning in her past reached out now and linked in that way that the Bene Gesserit do computations like Mentats. The daughter the Bene Gesserit wanted, here we go, not to end the old Atreides Harkonnen feud, but in fact to fix some genetic factor in their lines. What? She grasped for an answer. And that's a good question. But essentially, whatever it is that the Bene Gesserit are doing here, they're feeding back in the same bloodlines into the family. So it's incest is what they're going for. And it's maybe to hammer home a certain set of genes, if you like. It's a good question. And I've just put, is it the solution to the Kwisatz Haderach, something in the genes? Is it an inbreeding solution? So Paul picks up on this, of course, as though he saw inside her mind. And I think that's the scary thing for Jessica in this. That's every time that this sort of happens, it is as if Paul's reading her mind, but that's not what he's doing. Paul said, they thought they were reaching for me, but I'm not what they expected, and I've arrived before my time, and they don't know it. Jessica pressed her hands to her mouth, and here we go. Great mother, he's the Kwisatz Haderach. That's that in her mind. It's him. He is it. She felt exposed and naked before him, realizing then that he saw her with eyes from which little could be hidden, and that, she knew, was the basis of her fear. And here we go. This is we've had I just want to point out great mother in that sense. We'll come back to that. He's the Kwisatz Haderach. Again, it's just like he is reading your thoughts. You're thinking, I'm the Kwisatz Haderach. So it's again that sort of put that out of your mind, he says. I'm something unexpected. And I've immediately put in this next little bit here is very insightful about Jessica. I put with a big exclamation mark here. Jessica is a Bene Gesserit, and pretty much first and foremost. And I've kind of wanted to know why. I suppose it's about this motivation, I suppose. But just asking the question, straight away she goes there. I must get word to one of the schools. The mating index may show what has happened. She's looking for information about this, but at the same time, she wants to inform the Bene Gesserit on what has happened, and which is informing about her son to this organization. And of course, he says they won't learn about me until it's too late. So it's just in terms of Jessica's allegiances and how strong those allegiances are. I think first and foremost, in relation to her son and the Bene Gesserit, there is a bit of a conflict here. But it's we're going to see it. She replied earlier there with we exist to serve. She went straight there with this kind of rote announcement of the Bene Gesserit motto when she was truly scared. So as much as she said great mother a wee second ago, Paul tells it they won't learn about me until it's too late, and she tries to divert him here. She wanted to lowered her hand, said, "We'll find a place amongst the Fremen?" ? Is that a possibility? Yeah. And he says to her that the Fremen have a saying they credit to Shai Hulud, Old Father Eternity. He said, they say, be prepared to appreciate what you meet. So we have an invocation previously by Jessica of the Great Mother. And we had that in the Sun. Back a wee bit, we had the reference to Alat, which is, again, that sort of bringing some sort of old earth gods into a kind of sun deity there, if you like, within Arrakis. Let me see. And so, yes, the reference to, I suppose, the mother goddess, and that representation, there's a bit of that stuff in the terminology of the Imperium. Paul evokes Shai Hulud here as Old Father Eternity. Let me just have a wee look, actually, just to remind us of this. Shai Hulud. Mother. The Great Mother is the horned goddess, the feminine principle of space, commonly mother space, the feminine face of the male, female, neuter trinity, accepted as supreme being by many religions within the Imperium. So the being that's considered God in pretty much by most religions in the universe of Dune is a male, female, neuter. So male, female, and neuter gender trinity. Great Mother being the female aspect of it. Excuse me. And I think Shai Hulud is Old Father Time, Old Father Eternity, is one of the male aspects of it. Quite an interesting wee thing, actually. Right. Let's see. So be prepared to appreciate what you meet. Yeah, it's a good say, I suppose. Um, hmm. So we get Paul's thoughts again here, and there's the use of that phrase again, mother mine. Yes, mother mine, which is again I find possessive. Why not just yes, mother? Yes, mother mine, among the Fremen, you'll acquire the blue eyes and a callus beside your lovely nose from the filter tube to your still suit, and you'll bear my sister, Saint Alia of the Knife. There we go. And he's given her a religious title, and his little sister is going to be a saint. Her name's going to be Alia, and she's going to be associated with knives. And again, Jessica, and I again can't wait to meet Alia. What a great character. If you're not the Kwisatz Haderach, Jessica said, then what? And again, you couldn't possibly know, he said. You won't believe it until you see it. And Paul thought, I'm a seed. Here we go. This is quite important. I've actually made a wee note next to this. Paul thought, I'm a seed. And I've written the word chthonic next to it. And in terms of chthonic deities, etc., we've just had the invocation of a chthonic deity. Chthonic is to do with the earth, basically. If we look at ancient Greek deities, you could divide them into, chthonic deities, and then Olympians who are in the sky, basically, pretty much. So the chthonic deities are the old earth deities, creatures associated with the earth or living in the earth. And Paul being a seed here, that often, I suppose, we talk about triple goddesses. The obvious one is I suppose the Kore, the triple goddess for Kore, if you like, Kore being the maiden, and another name for Persephone, Persephone, and then so Persephone being the youth, Demeter being the maiden, and Hecate being the crone. So it's the kind of young, youthful, middle-aged, old kind of thing. They're goddesses of corn. And for example, the association of Persephone with the underworld is that the seeds, because she's I believe, 6 seeds of a pomegranate in the underworld, that she stays in the ground for six months of the year. And it's all sort of really an analogy for corn and how it's grown and harvested, etc., and the cycles of life. So Paul thinks, I'm a seed. And he suddenly saw how fertile was the ground into which he had fallen. And with this realization, here we go, the terrible purpose filled him, creeping through the empty place within, threatening to choke him with grief. So this empty place that we talked about, that was almost isolated, sealed off, that's where his grief was. It's empty, where his father should be. And it's almost completely cut off from his intellect, from his consciousness. The terrible purpose filled him. And here we go, threatening to choke him. And he sees 2 main branchings along the way ahead, 2 major possibilities. In one, here we go, so this is path 1. He confronts an evil old baron and said, hello, grandfather. And the thought of that path sickened him. So whatever goes on with the old baron in that future, if it sickened him, it's probably pretty violent and pretty perverted, if we can figure out what goes on with the baron. Strong suggestion of incest there, isn't there? Sickened him, and especially if we know the baron. The other path number 2, patches of, there's that grey obscurity, grey blobs, grey obscurity, except for the peaks of violence. A warrior, and this is the one we see, isn't it? Okay, the warrior religion there. Fire, like a fire spreading across the universe, with the Atreides green and black banner waving at the head of fanatic legions drunk on spice liquor. Gurney Halleck and a few others of his father's men, a pitiful few, were among them, all marked by the hawk symbol from the shrine of his father's skull. And I can't go that way, he muttered. That's what the old witches of your schools really want. He's saying that to Jessica. She probably doesn't know what he's talking about. But the idea that this bit gives us a suggestion that Gurney Halleck's alive. This is the holy war, the jihad. Gurney Halleck wearing, the symbol marked by the hawk symbol from the shrine of his father's skull. So they've got the idea that they've like gone on a pilgrimage and been given a mark of the hawk because he's been to the tomb of Leto Atreides. This kind of thing, ritual and religion in that. And of course, he says, "I can't go that way." He muttered, "It's what the old witch." So it's what the Bene Gesserit really want, is what he's telling us. "I don't understand you, Paul," his mother said, and he remains silent. And his thoughts about this go to the word about the seed he is, and he's thinking, "Here we go. This is it, I suppose." So he remains silent, thinking like the seed he was, thinking, here it is, with the race consciousness he had first experienced as terrible purpose. So if you want to know what Paul's terrible purpose is, this is the part of it, is race consciousness here. He found that he could no longer hate the Bene Gesserit or the Emperor or even the Harkonnens. They're all caught up in the need of their race to renew its scattered inheritance, to cross and mingle and infuse their bloodlines in a great new pooling of genes. And the race knew only one sure way for this, the ancient way, the tried and certain way that ruled over everything in its path, jihad. Right, now let's have a wee stop there for a second. Let's have a look. Now, just to let you know, this idea of Frank's isn't Frank's idea, once again. And the core of this idea comes from a book. Now, let's just get this for you quickly, and I'll have a look at your comments, folks, if anybody wants to. Pardon me. Now, let's have a look. I have this bookmarked here. Where are we? Science fiction. Okay, so the book where Frank gets all of these ideas on is called The Sexual Cycle of Human Warfare by N.I.M. Walter, published 1950. This idea that war is, I suppose, that war is it's the periodic sexual rhythms that overcome mankind. I suppose in a similar way to the messianic impulse, that there's this sexual impulse that overcomes mankind periodically as well, and we call it war. And it's the idea is to renew our race by genes. It's a mucho discredited book. Sorry, it's not considered smart. It's interesting for its time. Don't get me wrong. As I always say, I don't like to slag anything off at all. Really, completely worth having a look at, and its importance in terms of how Frank bought into some of these ideas, and they worked with. I suppose either he thought it was good stuff, or he simply put, these ideas worked really well with what he wanted for the story in terms of sex, renewing the race, these kind of things. And of course, one other thing to point out is that this is the whole, if we go to the Trojan War, the whole point of the war is that whether anybody, I'm not sure if anybody knows this, if you've not been on before, the whole point of the Trojan War is that Zeus is aware of a prophecy that one of his children will be greater than him. It doesn't actually say kill him or anything, but based on how things have gone with his father and his grandfather, it looks likely. So almost all of half the planet are children of Zeus, and so he pretty much starts the Trojan War so that he can slaughter as many of his children as possible. Hence dealing with the problem of not knowing which one it is. And it actually works for Zeus, by the way. So is that the person he needs to have killed during the Trojan War is actually killed, though he doesn't know their identity. So the person that would be greater than him was Achilles. And that's what the Trojan War is. He doesn't know who this person is, but he doesn't like it, so he starts the war. And through the wedding of Thetis and Pallas and Thetis, yes, Peleus, sorry, goodness gracious, Peleus and Thetis, apologies. Peleus with his bruised face. So the word jihad, of course. Now, this is one of these ones that gets people going. In Dune, the word jihad runs with the context of holy war. Let me bear. Now, in this sense, the Arabic word literally means striving or struggling, especially with a praiseworthy aim. So, in an Islamic context, it can refer to almost any effort to make personal and social life conform with God's guidance, such as struggle against one's own evil inclinations, proselytizing, or efforts towards the moral betterment of the Muslim community. Ummah. Oh, right, there we go. Though it's most frequently associated with war. So it's one of these, and again, that's got to be really its use in the West, really, with the media, etc., etc. I suppose that there's associations with certain words in Ireland, for example, that are accepted perfectly normal things elsewhere in the world, but here they're bad words. I suppose one of those things like jihad is it has a particular meaning. One of the things that appalled me actually is that I think we talked about the word, not myself, sorry, but there's been discussions about the word crusade and jihad and having a similar meaning. They're not even close, they're not even remotely related. And a crusade's all got to do with crosses, if you want. So they're not similar in any way. I have my definition for just here from what I had from before my own work, and I don't know where I might. This probably might come from Kaladin Bahayaldin's work. It's possible is that within the context of Dune, jihad is a holy war. But that's not outside of that context. Within Islam, I've put that it is a struggle for justice or betterment against a form of oppression or something that's not right, I suppose. But that's not a definition of war. So Paul says again, surely I cannot choose that way. Can't go that way, can I? Surely not. He thought. Well, again, we're asking what is the alternative. He's just told us that there are two paths, and one of them is kind of being, possibly, the barons. We know that the baron lusts after Paul. He's pretty disgusted by it, isn't it? Sickens him. So whatever it is, it's him and the baron hand in hand ruling the universe together, and he's sickened by it. So if he's not, or genocide. He sees the jihad ahead. Unfortunately, we do know that in June the jihad is genocide on a galactic scale, and a holy war, but more genocide than holy, I'd say. Surely I can't choose that way. I thought, well, yeah, okay. And he sees again within his mind's eye the shrine of his father's skull and the violence with the green and black banner waving in its midst. And again, Jessica interrupts him here. Violence, the shrine of his father's skull. Jessica interrupts him and she says, then the Fremen will give us sanctuary. And again, we get, he looked up, staring across the green lighted tent. So all this has been under this green light that's gone on. And I love this. Here you go. This is him describing as well. He looked up, staring across the green lighted tent at the inbred patrician lines of her face. Yes, he said, that's one of the ways. He nodded, yes. They'll call me Muad'Dib, the one who points the way. Yes, that's what they'll call me. And he closed his eyes, thinking, now, my father, I can mourn you. And he felt the tears coursing down his cheeks. And Paul gives water for the dead. There we go. And that's the end of chapter 22. He is a seed, and he can't go that way, but it looks like he also, surely I can't choose that way. And he started to go, yes, he said that's one of the ways. So again, indicators that Paul's, and yes, they'll call me Muad'Dib, the one who points the way. Yes, that's what they'll call me. That little kangaroo mouse that we had mentioned there. And he closed his eyes. And finally, this space that's occupied his mind, that's consciousness, that has been separate, that's been pushed aside possibly by his own decisions to, we talk about the mood earlier. Now he grieves for his father. Now, my father, I can mourn you. And he felt the tears coursing down his cheeks. And again, they've both given water for the dead in the tent, if you like, if we know our Fremen ways. And that is us. We have come to the end of book 1 of Dune. And goodness gracious, that really had me doing my work for the last couple of nights, and I hope to God these chapters get a bit smaller. Ah, dear, because they've been taken out of. That's the only reason why we were late on tonight. We decided to start at 10. Was we've been working solidly at that since last night, and we didn't get it done. So just there we go. If anybody's got any questions or I'll catch up with your comments in the meantime. If anybody's got any questions, and of course we are about to transition into book 2 of Muad'Dib. That's right, book 2 of Dune, and that's Muad'Dib. And there you go, folks. We're a good chunk through the book, and the misprints just keep on coming, don't they, Chad? Oh dear, dear. It's a heavy, dense chapter. This really trying to give us the sense of what's going on with Paul, with his mind, all of these kind of things. Let's have a look at your comments. Let's see. China says, how it was right. She was hardcore, and her first loyalties are to her school, not her son and family. Yeah, it seems so, doesn't it? There's Randall McCollum. Hi, Randall. If her first loyalties were to her school, she wouldn't have had a son. It's a good point as well. Yeah, there is something. Herbert loves paradox, doesn't he? And it's not just within his themes and his ideas, but it's there's something paradoxical about his characters as well. And that's a good point. If her first loyalties, she would have had the baby. She wouldn't have disobeyed. And we often get this sense that it's her love for her Duke. I suppose whenever you point it that way, it's her Duke that's also possessive. But there's definitely a plan at work here. I think the one thing that's interesting, Chaya and Randall there, as much as we, you're right, they're both Harkonnen. She's a Harkonnen. She didn't know it. First loyalties are to the Bene Gesserit. And Randall said, not really, maybe because she's disobeyed. And I think that's the case. But here, I think where has her mind gone to? Where's the core of her being? And at the point where her son is terrifying her, loyalty's family, Bene Gesserit, or son. The son is almost at a point in this. She's pregnant woman in a tent with something that's. He's all potential. We know what a Kwisatz Haderach is, don't we? He's an ultimate predator. There's a point of terror and fear for her there, and I think at that point her loyalties wouldn't lie with her son. It would be with her unborn daughter and the Bene Gesserit, just in case Paul goes mad. And I do think that the one thing that I've always had the sense of whenever the Bene Gesserit are testing for the whole animal thing, and we get a sense of that here with the word human and people, is that they're watching. They don't want a Kwisatz Haderach who's a psychopath, and you would get the sense that there's enough psychopaths running around in this universe. Because I'd argue a normal Kwisatz Haderach is bad enough, but one with psychopathic tendencies would be pretty bad. And for those of you who've known, we've done our wee Tiger video on the station. Gully Foyle is pretty much a psychopathic Kwisatz Haderach, and you don't want to get in the way of that. That's someone who will actively rip the universe apart just for a bit of personal revenge. She's coming to grips with being the mother of a shaitan savior's subverted archetype. Well, yeah, I suppose that ultimately Jessica's aware that there's roles to be played here with the Missionaria Protectiva, and that's it. At this point, the Missionaria Protectiva, as far as she's concerned, is a go. And she has a role to fit in, and she's immediately senses her position here. Her course is to become a broodmare. That's her course, but it's not her end goal, if you like. That's the way to preserve the Atreides bloodline. But she's got these myths that she'll be aware of from them that's going to help them insinuate themselves into Fremen society. And the whole point about the Missionaria Protectiva, by the way, it's not just about getting yourself into that society, but taking a position of power within it as a Reverend Mother or a Sayadina, if you see what I mean. It's not just about, you need a bit of looking. Welcome to the Fremen. You can start at the bottom and wash the dishes, if you see what I mean. Don't forget to preserve water. But yeah, no, it's about getting yourself into a position of power and influence, I think. And see, there's again, we talk about Aristaya. I think that this we talked about how I thought in the previous chapter I thought that Leto is I thought that the Baron Harkonnen in terms of almost everything outclasses Leto Atreides. Uh, they're not in the same league, and pardon me. I think the completeness with which House Harkonnen sorts out the Atreides is evidence of that. But the previous chapter, again with Baron and Piter, I suppose, sorry, as well as Baron Leto, is that they're, if you want to look at it as competition or to see excellence, in this case, we have a kind of Aristotle with Jessica and Paul, and Jessica's badly outclassed here, outperformed, if you want, outskilled. Not even that we could call them skills at this point, I suppose. They're just innate abilities with Paul. But there's skill and training behind it. As I said, he needs time to shape it. We're getting hints at future characters coming here. We've been told of Alia, Saint Alia of the Knife. We're getting that religious context just in her name. Pardon me. And he's a seed. This chthonic idea. I think we talked about, was it Mad Max the other week, talking about bullets as anti-seed. Plant one in a person and watch them die. But he is a seed. He's going to become. This is it. It's all going to spring from him here, isn't it? As much as he's a seed that's been planted in this fertile ground, it's quite possible to argue that it's perhaps Yuri that's planted him there, if you see what I mean. Yeah, there's so much. We get sort of a hint of, wow, is this going a bit mythical? Is this going a bit, what's going to happen here? Pardon me. You know, our last chapter here is just sort of ending in a tent, really an odd little tent that's partly transparent. We have Duncan Idaho's off away looking for Liat Kynes, as far as we know. And the other thing that we really get is that the damage that's gone on in Carthage, the Guild Bank, has been done over by the Baron and the Sardaukar. And arguably, if the Sardaukar are dressed in Atreides and that's the Baron's hand, then the Emperor is behind that as well. So, there's a bit of bank. We talk about how criminal these people are. The Emperor, Leto himself, is very dodgy. The Baron, but here's the Emperor and the Baron doing over the bank while they're murdering and slaughtering everybody. And I said we have the two possible paths, and interestingly, I suppose this is what's going to become the golden path ultimately. And we get a sense finally what the terrible purpose is as well. It's his ability to see all these different paths, and it's what we're told thinking with race consciousness is the other term that's been brought in here. And again, a lot of this links up with the ideas of evolution to Butler's ideas. In Erewhon as well. So there you go. There's tons in this chapter. It's my throat's hammered, by the way, folks. It's exposition heavy. Getting so much stuff out to tell us, and we have a massive change going on with one of our characters here. Well, actually, sorry, both characters are having a massive change. Jessica's pregnant with Alia, and she's got that physical change that she's going to go through. And Paul, of course, is going to go through this massive intellectual and emotional change that seemingly will be draining his emotions away, making him more pure intellect. And so we get to see him a lot as the Mentat here. Computations, this kind of terms, these kind of terminologies, etc. And we get a little bit more curiosities about the world of Arrakis. And we get just a big list of stuff, don't we? Really, just equipment, special application Fremen tools that are going to turn up, and I dare say quite a few of those that we've read about in this chapter, and there were just simply too many for me to go popping into the terminology of the Imperium. But we had all sorts of things there. For example, let's see, just one on. Yeah, we've got the Baradai pistol, for example, that's a static charge dust gun developed on Arrakis for laying down a large dye marker area on sand. So there you go. The pistol that was in the Frem kit's not a lethal weapon. It's for putting a marker down. So a bunch of those things there would be in the tools of the terminology of the Imperium. Yeah, we're going to start getting more familiar with Arrakis and its people, I suppose. As much as we've really seen actually very little of it, haven't we? So, book 2, Muad'Dib, is where we'll be starting the next time. I'll just have a wee look. 1 to 2, that was 214 pages, that book. 215. Oh, much longer. There we go. Plenty of pages to go yet, I suppose, folks. How is the list of properties of melange coming along? Oh, we'll have to start scribbling them down. But yeah, I think we've got quite a few at the minute. I think most of the ones that I've got, yeah, it's whenever we encounter the odd ones. Most of the properties of melange are known to me. I would say the main ones, but it's whenever we find the odd little ones, or where it's used as a substitute drug. I think that's kind of interesting. But yeah, it's a geriatric drug. It does all sorts, doesn't it? It's a geriatric drug. It's fatal upon withdrawal. Spectrum awareness, narcotic. We have a chemical makeup of it somewhere. But there we go. Yes, indeed. But yeah, there's little things. I don't know. There's lots of stuff I need to be doing with this. It is good fun. But all sorts of little things to find. And we've had a mystery. So the mystery that we haven't been answered, by the way, one of the mysteries that we've been given is who is Jessica's parents. And this we're told her father is the Harkonnen. Paul must know who the mother is here. Absolutely must know, and doesn't reveal it. And whenever he says one of you, isn't it? It's like a slap in the face to her. And I suppose, isn't it? We have within the Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson extended Dune universe that the mother is the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohim. And I always thought that was actually who it should be, who it was, if you see what I mean. And so as much as people sometimes go, oh, that's maybe, but I actually think that was the logical answer. And it's to do with the levels of affection, I suppose, how Mohim behaves towards Paul and Jessica very, very early on. The whole drug thing and withdrawal being fatal is very interesting as far as what was going on in Frank Herbert's time. Yeah, I suppose so. Some drugs are almost 100%, fatal upon withdrawal. It depends on what you're taking. But yeah, there's a lot of I suppose drugs that will have fatal after effects, but withdrawal can be particularly hard on the body. It can cause shock. But yeah, that's the thing with this drug, Cosette. Is I mean, why? Often we have to wonder, why does Herbert present this thing to us? What is it about this drug, and what does he want us to think about it? It's so all pervasive. It's a ubiquitous drug. That's the thing about melange. It has many different uses and forms. And I said, if anybody hasn't read Vril, The Coming Race by Edward Bulwer Lytton, I'd argue that the main drug that melange is based on is Vril. And it is also the same. It has all sorts of uses, including a form of energy and as a weapon. Food stuff, this kind of thing. So people eat melange here. It can be used for all sorts of reasons. But the general sense that we get is that within the universe, it's used as a geriatric drug. In other words, to preserve your life, to slow aging. And I get the sense that the natural point where someone starts is actually at the point of death, I suppose. How much of the Alan Watts psychedelic effect influenced Frank's writing? I'm not familiar with it. Maybe I am actually. Hang on, it's been a while since I used to read a lot of counterculture stuff and all that. Alan Watts. Let's have a look. There we go. Let's see. No, I don't really know him at all. Maybe bumped in. Let's see. Known for interpreting and popularizing Indian and Chinese traditions, Buddhist, Taoist, and Hindu philosophy for a Western audience. Very good. Received a master's degree in theology. Seabury Western Theological Seminary, became an Episcopal priest in 1945. Left the ministry in 1950. Moved to California, where he joined the faculty of American Academy of Asian Studies. Oh, right, there we go. The Way of Zen. Okay. It's always good to seek out people's books sometimes if I don't know who they are. The Way of Zen. One of the first books on Buddhism and psychotherapy, East and West, argued that Buddhism could be thought of as a form of psychotherapy. Nature, Man and Woman, 1958. From a literary point of view, best book I've ever written. Okay, yeah, explored human consciousness and psychedelics in works such as The New Alchemy and The Joyous Cosmology. Let me just have a look at where's his bibliography. Oh, quite valid. Okay. Lectures on Zen nature. Let me see if there's anything I've read here. No, probably not. Actually, no. You know, some of these probably just missed. I've probably just missed him on my radar. There's so many people about doing so many things, but very good. Yeah, introducing hippies to Zen Buddhism. Excellent. That's something you could put on your tombstone. Oh dear. Yeah, I suppose I looked at a lot of the beatnik stuffs and things like I used to read things like Heaven and Hell, Doors of Perception, Aldous Huxley, kind of all of that sort of stuff. I would read a fair amount of the beatniks and the whole counterculture for the drugs thing and stuff like that. Yeah, I suppose the counterculture's in full rage, isn't it, at the minute? At that time, sorry. And the three books that really, once you've gone into the 60s and full stride past the mid 60s, if you like, the three university books that are really heavily influencing the counterculture are Dune, The Lord of the Rings, and Stranger in a Strange Land. Used to put methadone into the foot of Nazi soldiers during World War II so that they wouldn't take off or they would have terrible withdrawals. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think they put all sorts of drugs into soldiers. It's not a smart thing to be a soldier. I'd say if you're a soldier, you've been experimented on at some point or another. The question is, do you know about it or not? I thought Watts and Herbert were friends at the time of writing Dune, and influence seems to be in the text. There we go. Been a long time since I looked at that, Lord Crunk. Let me find out for you. Point me in the right direction and we'll go looking. Let's see. Now, big ass books by Frank Herbert. That'll probably be something like The Road to Dune. There we go. Let's have a wee nosy. I got two copies of this. I think this is I just got a paperback one of this, but the other one I'd written all over. It's the big publisher's edition. Let me just check. What do you know? Not a single. Oh, for goodness sake. No index. I wonder is there one on the other one? Is that to do with Lord Crunk? There's something to do with Frank. That's not the book I'm wanting, is it? Hang on. Frank Herbert book, the one that's The Road to Dune. That's it. That's got other people's stamp all over it. It's not the one I'm thinking on. It's Brian Herbert's biography of his father, Dreamer of Dune, wherever I've put it. I'll have a wee look, actually. I'll make a wee note on that, actually, within here. Lord Crunk, thank you very much. Let's get the guy's name. And we'll have I'll see if I can find that for next time. Where does his name go? Alan Watts. There we go. Let's scribble that down. Let's see if we can find out. But yeah, I get the sense that Altered States exploration. I got Altered States. Not really on video there, some DVD. Watts and Herbert were friends at the time. There is a sort of discussion, I think, in Brian Herbert's book of his dad taking psychedelics, and I think the way he presented it is that I think the way it comes across, and I don't quote me on this one. I'll actually get the book up and we'll have a wee look at it because I just can't remember. But I think he pretty much says that Frank kind of had a bit of an experience with something LSD-ish or something like that. I think maybe in Mexico, and that was about it. Maybe tried it once. Though I'm not sure I would believe that. I have to say, I don't know. Writers who do drugs and then write about them, as I suppose, tend to stand out a little bit better. There tends to be a bit more realism with their understanding of drugs. I think, like likes of William S. Burroughs, um, particularly, I would think. I'm trying to think of who else. Hunter S. Thompson springs to mind. But I don't know. A lot of these drugs seem reasonably well constructed, but they do seem to be idea drugs, if you see what I mean. And as I said, there is a big link between Dune and Erewhon, and to a lesser extent Vril. But if you understand Vril, the substance, it's very similar to melange. It does all sorts of things, and as that's where we're sort of having a wee chat there about what Chaya was saying, the list of properties of melange. Yeah, I'll definitely have to. Yeah, that's definitely. Let's get that done. I think at some point I'm going to make a wee note on me, it's a good place at an intersection here in the book, really, to grab a couple of wee loose ends or check out any wee things that we've missed. Excuse me. But I'd say, the whole psychedelic drugs thing, as much as it catches up to the 60s, I think people are taking them aplenty before that, if you see what I mean. Yeah, effects of melange. Look and compile. I think that's the way to do it. Yeah, there's a couple of things we talked about. I should keep a wee separate book for those. Anytime we find them, go and scribble them down. We'll have a wee look at Alan Watts as well. Yeah. No, my brain, in terms of all remembering, the Slattery family is about the only people I would remember from Frank Herbert's personal life, just all these years later, I suppose. But we will have a wee nosy at them and see what's about that. And yeah, what's with the influence on drugs, and then we were chatting about the other one. Just for anybody who's interested, I'll give you the title of the book. And this is not to do with the drug. This is to do with war, sex, sort of the sexual cycle of human warfare. It's called, by N.I.M. Walter, from 1950. You can find it on Jack Aruti's website there. He's got a couple of downloadable versions of it. It's just one of those books, I suppose. But I thought you mentioned around during the spice mining chapter that you're already compiling a list. Well, they have Vita, but it's all over the place. So that's the point. I keep marking these things as they happen in my notes. In terms of compiling a list, I need to pull them out of the notes and put them into a list, don't we? But I do sort of I don't know if you can see what I'm doing as I go. That's the death of a character. Anytime somebody dies, they get a wee skull. I have wee indicators with these, so I'll be able to flick through it and find them pretty quickly. So it's just, yeah, definitely. We have enough. We've got a good bit on melange already, but nothing, as far as I know, nothing we didn't already know. So it's the wee ones that I'm looking for, I suppose, Chaya, the ones that I don't remember, the little curious things about it. But yeah, no, I suppose I've always explored that aspect of it. If you see what I mean. And I have good knowledge on that kind of thing. So there we go. Altered states exploration, indeed. Yeah, skull and crossbones. Well, that last chapter we had lots of wee skulls. I just draw them as kind of it's just a good way of me just commemorating wee things that happen within the books. Whenever I'm working with these books, I'm trying just to show you. I haven't done my most recent chapters yet, but I color code them. I've got a bunch of highlighters here. So red stuff tends to be for danger, aggression, violence, that kind of thing. Use yellow for dialogue, green and blue for geography, blue more stuff for the mind, that kind of thing. Purple I use for kind of dominant characters and key terms and stuff like that. And then sort of orange is kind of just notable stuff. So I have a wee sort of method. There's the police away by again, as usual. 138. So we're plagued by the police here. So there we go. But yeah, I also have a couple of wee things I must dig out. I've got some old stuff on. There we go. There's the previous chapter. The fall begins. Can you see the wee stack of skulls? Leto, skull, tooth, and a wee X. Just wee whimsy, but it's interesting. I don't know. Possibly ended up with notebooks larger than the Dune itself, but there we go. But yeah, I definitely like to. I'll put that together. Don't worry about it, Chaya. We'll see by the end of June how much we have on Melange. The other thing I was going to say to you was that the other thing to do that on, if you want to, and I'm not going to do this because I've done it once, is it's the same thing, compiling all the stuff about the worms. And I did that once, and the results of that are in that diagram that's on our what do you call it, the community section of our YouTube channel there. So it's up there. That's the big crazy flow diagram. That took one full reading of all 6 books. So that was the good thing about that one, Chai. I suppose everything that you ever needed to know about the life cycle of the worm is in that diagram. Because it would have amounted to 10,000 words, and I was that busy stripping words out of the PhD, just to the point of I'm going to destroy my own work because of these idiots who won't let you do anything a bit bigger than what they can do. And I think that's really the sad thing about the university PhD process, really, is everybody wants you to have they all want you to have the same limitations as they do, which is a bit sad. There you go. Otherwise, I'd have an awful lot more work done on this, I suppose. Well, I think all of it was lost, actually. But there we go. And I also think one other thing there is just that within that, the only other wee thing to point out with Paul, I think they're within this race consciousness. So the idea of race consciousness and his terrible purpose being equated, if you like. Just the other wee thing is that he no longer hates. I don't hate the Harkonnen. I don't hate the Bene Gesserit, and I don't hate the Emperor. This just, we're all caught up in the same cycle. And I suppose ultimately we will get to the point at the end of the book where this is meant to be the plan of someone else, I think, But there you go. Well, listen, folks, my throat, it's been a week. That's 2 of the biggest chapters in June. And I'm about to have a well-deserved break, just tonight. But we'll be back on Thursday with our next chapter, the first chapter of book 2, Muad'Dib. And thank goodness for that. Am I going to have a bit of an easier time? And the only thing I don't like about these big exposition heavy things is that we do have to pile through them, and we don't really learn. We don't get to explore, I suppose, some things in chapters like this. They're set up for us here so that we can explore them in detail later. But an awful lot to get through there. And there we go. So Chaya says, thanks, Doc, and good night all. Thank you, Chaya. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to hit the hay, and I'll say good night to you all. Cosette says, good night, everyone. Thank you so much, Doc. You're welcome, Cosette. My absolute pleasure. As for all of you folks out there, look after yourselves. Take care of yourselves no matter where you are. Be safe. And we'll see you Thursday, back to normal at 9 p.m. GMT +1. And there's Lord Kronk saying thanks. See you. Thanks, guys. All the very best. Take care. See you soon. Do 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 bum bum ba dee bum ba dee dum bum ba ba.